make sure our economy is stable, to make sure our communities are cared for, and to move forward and rebuild our country. That is the choice. I accept not a single vote has been cast. I'm humble about this, and I know every vote must be earned. But the power now, under our democracy, is with the voters.
Staying with Labour, Sir Keir Starmer says his party will fix Britain's economy as he outlined a series of plans to cut household bills. Speaking at an event in Scotland, the Labour leader said the new public-owned GBNews would cut costs and speed up the transition to clean power. Urging his supporters to vote for change, Sir Keir said that while Liz Truss had lost control of the economy, Labour's plans could be trusted. The Prime Minister dismissed it as a vanity project. A 9-year-old girl remains in a critical condition after a drive-by shooting in East London after the offender fired from a motorbike. 3 men aged 26, 37 and 42 who were sitting outside a restaurant in Hackney were also injured and taken to hospital for treatment. Police say one of them is facing life-changing injuries. At a press conference just moments ago, Detective Chief Superintendent James Conway said the motorbike was stolen from a property in Wembley in 2021. They've urged anyone with information to contact police or Crime Stoppers. Free school meals would be given to all primary school children under a pledge by the Liberal Democrats. The party says it will fund the plan by introducing a tax on share buybacks. The scheme would be introduced immediately for children living in poverty before being phased in for all children. Sir Ed Davey says too many children are going to school on empty stomachs. Former Conservative MP Julian Knight has announced that he'll run as an independent at the general election. Posting to social media, he said he was forced out of the party due to allegations he said were false. It comes after claims of serious sexual assault, though he faced no criminal charges. Meanwhile, the Welsh Conservatives launched a campaign this afternoon pledging to bolster the country's NHS and halt a proposed tourism tax. The party also took aim at Labour's 20-mile-an-hour blanket speed limits, saying there's no evidence they improve safety or air quality. Police say at least 2 people have been injured in a knife attack in Germany during an online live streaming event. The assailant was reportedly outside a campaign tent for the German anti-Islamist group Citizens Movement Pax Europa. The attacker was then seen walking through the city's Marktplatz Square, all of which was streamed live online. The suspect stabbed several people involved in the event before knifing a police officer in the back. In the US, Donald Trump was found guilty last night of falsifying records to cover up a sex scandal in a historic turnaround from commander-in-chief to convicted criminal. Trump, who pleaded not guilty and denied all 34 counts against him, rejected the verdict and said the people would ultimately decide in November's election. Recent polls suggest a tight race against President Joe Biden, though around 13% of Trump's supporters have said they wouldn't vote for him if he were found guilty. Houthi rebels in Yemen have claimed responsibility for an attack on a US aircraft carrier in the Red Sea, which they say is in response to joint UK-US strikes last night. The Prime Minister says the UK will not hesitate to protect British interests after the RAF carried out a 5th round of joint strikes against the Houthis, who've been targeting commercial ships. More than 600 homes in Surrey have been told not to drink their tap water after tests by Thames Water. The company says there's a possible deterioration in the quality of drinking water in some areas. People in the village of Bramley have been given precautionary instructions not to use their drinking water for cooking or brushing their teeth or drinking. It comes after tests were carried out following a historical fuel leak from a petrol station, which has prompted complaints from locals since 2021. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, who represents the constituency, says bottled water is being distributed to all those affected. And a zoo is celebrating after 11 endangered baby penguins were born, the highest number in a decade. The Humboldt penguin chicks were born at Chester Zoo in mid-April. Experts say the species was the most at risk of the 17 penguin species due to climate change and overfishing. They're naming this year's chicks after plants, with nettle, thistle, dandelion, tulip and daffodil among the new baby chicks. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Martin.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, there's only one place to start, of course, and it's a huge development in the Labour civil war. Just over an hour ago, Sir Keir Starmer said Diane Abbott is free to stand as a Labour candidate in the general election. And this comes after a long row over the future of Britain's first black woman MP. Well, Ms Abbott had been expected to be overlooked after she lost the whip last year, after she suggested that Jewish, Irish and traveller people experience prejudice but not racism. But here's what Sir Keir said this afternoon.
Diane Abbott was elected in 1987, the first black woman MP. She's been a trailblazer. She has carved a path for other people to come into politics and public life. The whip has obviously been restored to her now, and she is free to go forward as a Labour candidate.
Have you spoken to Diane, and do you understand that she wants to put herself forward to stand?
She's free to go forward as a Labour candidate. The whip is back with her. It's been restored. And of course, you know, she was a trailblazer for many, many years and has cleared the path for others to come into politics. So, formally matter for the NEC, but I've not expressed a view up until now. She's free to go forward as a Labour candidate.
There you go, Abbott's back, and I'm joined now by Alison McGovern, who's the Shadow Minister for Work and Pensions. Welcome to the show, Alison. Alison, the campaign trail, the general election has started, but who would notice it? Nobody's even been talking about anything to do with Labour's election plan. They've all been talking about Diane Abbott. This debacle has completely overshadowed week one of the general election trail. Is it the right thing to do to bring Diane Abbott back, or is it yet another U-turn from Keir Starmer?
Well, I would definitely disagree with the characterisation of the situation there as you just have it. I've spoken to many hundreds of people on doorsteps since Rishi Sunak decided to finally at last call the general election, and they've spoken to me about lots of things, the state of their local A&E, what's happening for their kids in school, and I definitely would disagree with your characterisation of the discussion that's happening in the general election. As it is, you know, this hasn't been an easy situation for anybody. You described earlier the problem with the letter that was written in Diane's name, but she's gone through that disciplinary process and done the necessary training that was asked of her, as I understand it. So this process is dealt with now, and in snap elections, you have this expedited process to confirm candidates. We'll get on with it. And, you know, the country, I think, is crying out for change in the way that we run our government. And that's what we in the Labour Party are absolutely focused on.
You know, Alison, a lot of people will be scratching their heads when they think about the Labour Party. You pride yourselves on being anti-racist, on kicking out anybody who would come across as a bigot. But we need to address where this all started. That letter in The Observer, it's true that many types of white people with points of difference, such as redheads, can experience this prejudice, but they are not all their lives subject to racism. In pre-civil rights America, Irish people, Jewish people and travellers were not required to sit at the back of the bus. Clearly, saying that racism experienced by Jewish people doesn't really count because they weren't sitting at the back of the bus. How do you think it washes with the British public that you go on some online training module and you're suddenly not racist? Because that's what Diane Abbott was accused of.
Well, I think that she has accounted for that letter, which is not acceptable, and that process has been gone through. I think that we need to get change in our country because whilst I understand this is an issue that had to be dealt with, actually this general election is about making sure that our kids have got a decent school to go to. It's about making sure that when people are sick in this country that the NHS functions. And crucially, it's about making sure that people have got decent homes to live in and good jobs to do. Those are the big issues that affect all of us. That's why we need to change our country, and that's what we're focused on.
Alison, I put it to you, if she said these kinds of comments, I don't know, about black people or Muslims or gay people, this wouldn't have gone away. She'd have been kicked out of the party. It sends out the message, does it not, that racism against Jewish people doesn't really count. You can simply apologise, atone for your movements, and then you're back in the party. Not in that, be standing at the next election.
I profoundly disagree. We have to have zero tolerance on racism and discrimination. That's why the Labour Party following the terrible situation that we got into previously. We elected Keir Starmer as our leader, who promised to rip out anti-Semitism by its roots, and he has got on and done that and established processes that can deal with it. Now we are in a general election at last, wanting to change our country and show that there is a better way for people to have a decent home, a good job to do, and to have public services that support them. And that's where we are focused in the general election.
Isn't the fact of the matter is they could have cleaned up the party properly by getting rid of Jeremy Corbyn, job done there, but they could have got rid of Diane Abbott to prove that we will not stand for any type of anti-Semitism in the party. But Sir Keir Starmer has buckled. 6 unions wrote to him. Angela Rayner complained. Anna Sawa complained. There's a rift within the party. Sir Keir Starmer has backed down. He's taken the path of least resistance to let Diane Abbott stand and hope this just goes away.
I just don't agree with you. We have changed our party since the defeat in 2019. We have made sure that we've got processes so that we can deal with any problems as they happen, and to make sure that we dealt with the challenge that we previously had in our party. Keir Starmer has changed the Labour Party, and that's why we are focused on the issues that are raised with me day in, day out, on doorstep after doorstep, people seeing the consequence of 14 years of Conservative government, which has been absolutely terrible for both public services and for people's pay and the quality of life that people in this country are able to lead. We've changed our party in order to be able to change our country, and that's what we're getting on and doing now.
Yeah, Alison, there's still a row breaking out as we speak around candidate selection. Chris Ward, a Starmer advisor, has been parachuted into Brighton. That's gone down very badly with the left of the party. Faiza Shaheen has been deselected, being replaced. She's saying that's proof of a systemic campaign of racism, Islamophobia and bullying within some of the party. Divided parties don't win, and it very much looks like, Alison McGovern, at the moment, the Labour Party is incredibly divided.
Again, I'm going to have to disagree with you. That's just not the case. I am lucky enough to have experienced, this is my 3rd snap election now, and we always have this swift move to get all of our candidates in place. We've got some fantastic people who have stepped forward to represent the Labour Party. And I have to say, you know, if you think that that is a divided party, what have you got to say about the Conservative Party with their absolute merry-go-round of prime ministers and chancellors? I mean, that has been so terrible for the country. We are selecting a great bunch of people to be our candidates. We've got a vision for changing our country, and that is what people are talking about on doorsteps up and down the country. So I'm sorry to have had to disagree with your characterisation of politics so much this afternoon, Martin, but I feel you've got it absolutely wrong.
OK, well, we can agree to disagree, and I want to thank you for your time, Alison McGovern. Very generous for your time. Thank you. The Shadow Minister for Work and Pensions, Alison McGovern. Thank you very much. Now, moving on, listening to all of that was our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who's out on the campaign trail. Catherine, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure and a happy Friday. You're on the campaign bus there. Well, here we go again. Another day, and all we're talking about is Diane Abbott and rifts within the Labour Party. That's the last thing Sir Keir Starmer wants us to talk about, and yet, here we are again.
Yes, good afternoon, Martin. I'm here in Cheshire, where the Prime Minister has been visiting a farm. But yes, you're quite right. This afternoon, here we go again, talking about Diane Abbott. Keir Starmer appeared to have kept a lid on divisions within the Labour Party over the last few years, didn't he? Seemed to do a very good job of making it seem like they were all united. That has completely broken apart over the last couple of days with this massive, massive row erupting over Diane Abbott. Now, Sir Keir Starmer's first position was no, she hasn't been barred. It's a decision for the National Executive Committee on Tuesday. Then, of course, Deputy Leader Angela Rayner came out yesterday and, in complete contrast to Sir Keir Starmer, said, well, I think that if she wants to stand, she should be able to stand. Then we had Anna Sawa, the Scottish Labour leader, basically agreeing with Angela Rayner. That was not the official line. Only a few hours ago this morning, Sir Keir Starmer was still saying it's a decision for the NEC, but then lo and behold, in the last hour or so, he has moved, now saying she is free to go forward as a Labour candidate if she wishes. Now, the irony of all this is not what was supposed to happen. What was supposed to happen was that Diane Abbott was going to get the Labour whip back, and then she would decide that she was going to retire, and this would all be done very graciously, etc., etc. But given that this story broke with the news that she thought she'd been barred from standing, it's all got very nasty very quickly. Now, I think initially the feeling within Labour was that this was sort of a bubble story that would go away. They just had to ride it out. Clearly that has changed when we've gone on with 3 days of bad headlines and people across the political spectrum basically saying that this is no way to treat the first female black Labour MP. So let's see if she stands. She had been planning to retire, we understand, but I suspect now, after all this, she's going to stand for Labour, and I would suspect too that she will win, regardless of what Sir Keir Starmer might or might not have liked to happen.
Okay, Catherine Forster, you are currently, as we can see, tearing across the country on the Conservatives' blue battle bus, out on the campaign trail with the Prime Minister. What's the latest? I mean, everyone's talking about Diane Abbott. What's Rishi up to?
Yes, so we're here in the northwest today. The Prime Minister has been at a farm just close to Macclesfield. It's David Rutley is the candidate there. This is a super safe Conservative seat in that he's got an 11,000 majority, and you would imagine this is a seat that has been Conservative for a very, very long time. But of course, we know now that Labour and the Lib Dems have in their sights many, in inverted commas, safe Conservative seats. So I think this is a bit about shoring up their core vote, getting out to that rural vote and saying, look, I'm here for you. And of course, the Prime Minister, talking to farmers, was stressing that he represents a rural community in Richmond, that he talks to the farming community all the time, that he values what they do, talking about the weather and how much rain there's been. And of course, some of them are not very happy about some of those conditions post-Brexit.
Okay, Catherine Forster, thank you very much for that update. All aboard the battle bus with Rishi Sunak. We'll cross back to you later in the show. Thank you very much. Now, we'll have lots more on the election campaign, of course, throughout the entire show. And if you want to see Sir Ed Davey fall off a paddleboard, then don't worry. I'll have that and much more coming up just for you. And there's plenty of coverage on our website, GBNews.com, and you've helped to make it the fastest growing national news website in the country. So thank you very much. Now, £20,000 tax-free has to be won in our Great British Giveaway, but you need to be quick as lines close at 5 o'clock today. Got an hour and a half left to go. Here's all the details that you need for your chance to win the Wonga.
It's the final day to see how you could win an incredible £20,000 in cash. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry as lines close today. You've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. today. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, Donald Trump has been found guilty of falsifying business records. He says the verdict is a disgrace, but the big question now is, will he be sent to prison or will he roll back? We'll be joining Trump soon. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
We'll be there.
This is GB News.
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Joint CEO at the UK Sepsis Trust, Dr. Ron Daniels. Very good to see you this morning. Why is it with sepsis we sort of hear very little about it in day-to-day life until there's either a big story or a big tragedy? Why is that? Is it common?
Well, it's astonishing, isn't it? We have a condition here that affects nearly 250,000 people across the UK each year and claims 48,000 lives. And just for context, breast cancer, and I'm not diminishing how horrible that can be, claims 11,000 lives. So sepsis is 4 times more prolific as a killer. I think the reason we don't hear about it is because it doesn't really belong to any particular speciality of doctors. It touches every aspect of healthcare, and therefore there's no professional group to be championing it, which means it needs an advocacy organisation like ours.
My understanding is that it's when your own immune system starts to attack the tissues, but by the time people realise that their temperature isn't just flu or something, they can often be in quite a perilous state.
It arises in people of any age, people with whether or not they've got underlying illness, and it can arise as a consequence of any infection. So it presents hugely differently.
So what do we do?
If you're concerned something is devastatingly wrong, there are 6 key symptoms to look for, and they spell the word sepsis. S for slurred speech or confusion. E for extreme pain in the muscles or joints. P for passing no urine, no water in a day. S for severe breathlessness. I for it feels like I'm going to die, and people really do say that. And then the final S for skin that's mottled or discoloured or very pale. Any one of those 6 in the context of infection, it goes straight to A&E.
The People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Approaching 3:26. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, later in the show, across live to Epsom on one of the biggest days in the horse racing calendar. But before that, to the huge news coming out of the United States. And there's one simple question today. Will Donald Trump go to prison? Trump was found guilty on all 34 counts following his hush money trial last night. He says the verdict was a disgrace, and Trump is expected to speak to the media at around 4 o'clock our time, around about half an hour's time. Now, of course, Nigel Farage is very good friends with the Don, and Farage told GB News that the jury's verdict is good news for Trump's hopes of becoming president again.
I personally think that the Biden administration, the US judicial system, have massively overplayed their hand. It was interesting that within half an hour of the verdict, Trump's donation website crashed. I mean, huge numbers of people were going on to give money to his campaign. And the real key thing here is what happens to those in the middle. People love Trump, they'll say it's a disgrace. People hate Trump, they'll say, oh, at least our system works. What happens to those people in the middle? And my guess is that fair-minded Americans will think this is not showing their country in a very good light. And my sense is, ironically, this is probably the biggest electoral boost he could ever have had.
Well, to discuss this further, I'm now joined by the former White House advisor to President Trump, Sebastian Gorka. Seb, always a delight to have you on the show. So the world awaits Donald Trump's appearance around about 30 minutes or so time. Last night, he called the trial rigged and disgraceful. Are you expecting him to come out and be meek and apologetic, or do you think he'll go nuclear?
I think if you've been awake and have a pulse for the last 8 years, you know what it's going to be today. It's a sad day for all Americans in terms of how the legal fabric of our judicial system has been rent asunder by Judge Juan Merchan, by the prosecutor Alvin Bragg and by Biden's Department of Justice. But on the flip side, as that clip from Nigel made very clear, the American people, especially those who are undecided, see through this. The fact that the president's website, donaldjtrump.com, crashed for hours yesterday because it simply couldn't take all the donations that were coming from new supporters. The fact that my Twitter feed is full of Democrats who say, that's it, this is wrong, I'm voting for Donald Trump. We've had it. We can't have the use of the judicial system as a political weapon. And to use a British phrase, this isn't just President Trump or my former boss. This is the leader of the opposition who right now is trouncing the incumbent Joe Biden in all the significant polls. And it should be the American people who get to decide on November 5th whether he gets to be president, not some Democrat judge in a Democrat city.
And Seb, how do you think it will go, though, at that electoral poll? It is the only poll that counts, but elections are won from the centre, not from the MAGAs, not from the hardcore base, who will probably follow Donald Trump off a cliff if they could. But will more moderate people, irrespective of what you say about this being a rigged trial, how it reflects badly on the entire fabric of the American legal system, will they be spooked by the fact that, whether you agree with it or not, that he has been found guilty on all of those counts? Will that put the more moderate voters off, do you think?
Well, look, you, me, all the viewers of GB News, we're freaks. Why? Because we're obsessed with politics. We watch these shows, we read the newspapers, and it's tough to admit this, but we don't determine elections. It is the middle, as you say, the people who are rather apolitical, who just want to make that car payment at the end of the month, make sure the kids have a new pair of shoes for the new term at school. And for them, what's the most important thing? Usually it's their wallets, it's their pocketbooks, and just look at the economy. We've had a doubling of the rate for a mortgage in the last 3 years. We've had record inflation. We've got open borders. I mean, you think you've got problems in the UK. We've got upwards of 10,000 illegals a day. More than 8 million are let into the US by Joe Biden's regime. So whether it's, the illegals threatening your jobs, the price of petrol, which was quadrupled at the top of the Biden administration, or just the fact that your mortgage payment has doubled in the last 3 years, I think people remember fondly the years when we were in the White House, when we had the biggest economy. We had a gallon of petrol was less than $2. When the border was secure, we crushed ISIS, lowest unemployment in history for Hispanics and for Black Americans. People are going to vote based upon the economic disaster that is the Biden administration. And then, of course, you'll have, the hardcore MAGA base of people who listen to my radio show every day. And then you'll have the loony leftists. But the middle will wake up that they want the boss back.
OK, well, all eyes will be on Trump Tower around about 30 minutes' time. Sebastian, Gorka, always a huge pleasure to have you on the show. No doubt we'll speak to you very much more between now and November the 5th. Bonfire night, sure to be fireworks. Seb Gorka, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Now, still lots more to come between now and 4 o'clock. I'll have the very latest after a mass stabbing in Germany. Campaigners for the country's anti-Islamist group were attacked earlier on. But first, it's your headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
The headlines this hour, Sir Keir Starmer says Diane Abbott is free to stand as a Labour candidate at the general election in July, ending days of uncertainty. Miss Abbott had the Labour whip restored this week after a long suspension, but claims she'd been banned from standing as a candidate and accused the Labour leader of culling the party's left wing. But Sir Keir Starmer says she can stand with the party.
Labour and a vote for Labour is a chance to end that chaos, to turn a page, to change for the better of the country, to change our NHS, to change our public services, to make sure our economy is stable, to make sure our communities are cared for, and to move forward and rebuild our country. That is the choice. I accept not a single vote has been cast. I'm humble about this, and I know every vote must be earned. But the power now, under our democracy, is with the voters.
Keir has also said today his party will fix Britain's economy as he outlined a series of plans to cut household bills. Speaking at an event in Scotland, the Labour leader said the new publicly owned GB Energy would cut costs and speed up the transition to clean power. The Prime Minister dismissed it as a vanity project. And police are appealing for information from Turkish and Kurdish communities in London today as a 9-year-old girl remains in a critical condition in hospital after a drive-by shooting in East London. She was having dinner with her family in a restaurant in Hackney when shots were fired from outside the restaurant. 3 men were also hurt in the incident. One of them is facing life-changing injuries. Detectives are saying the motorbike used in the attack had been stolen from a property in Wembley in 2021, and they're urging anyone with any information to come forward and contact police or leave a message on Crime Stoppers. Multiple people have been injured after a man apparently stabbed members of the public during an live stream event in Germany. The attacker was reportedly outside a campaign tent for the German anti-Islamist group Citizens Movement Pax Europa before he was shot by police. And if you're just catching up with the news today, Donald Trump has become the first US president to be handed a criminal conviction. He was found guilty last night of falsifying business records to cover up a sex scandal. It comes as polls suggest a tight race for the White House against Joe Biden, though around 13% of Trump's supporters have said they wouldn't vote for him if he was found guilty. He's due to speak in New York this afternoon. We'll have that live for you right here, GB News. That's the headlines. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News. Scan the QR code on the screen right now or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Checking on the afternoon numbers for you now. The pound buying you $1.2756 and €1.1733. The price of gold is £1,835.60 an ounce. And the FTSE 100 is currently at £8,267.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Polly. Now, we've got loads more still to come on the show. And remember, at 4 o'clock, we're due to hear from Donald Trump himself. It's going to be explosive stuff. But if you want to get in touch with me, here's a new way. And Bev Turner has got all the details.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/your say.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Eastbound M8 up the turn for Junction 1, that's the Edinburgh City bypass, queuing for a breakdown, a lane shut. Same problem eastbound on the M8 around Glasgow at Junction 13 for Provan. A1M in County Durham, that's still closed both ways between Carville and Chester Street, Junction 62 to 63. That's been the case since the early hours of this morning. It's at the scene there of a collision. A queue for a breakdown eastbound M62 before the Eccles interchange at Junction 12, that's going. Queuing north for the M6 up to Castle Bromwich at 5, following an earlier breakdown. All lanes open though. Queuing for an earlier broken down lorry clockwise M25 at Lakeside at 30. A lane shutting queues westbound for the M2. There's a breakdown just after Faversham at Junction 6 causing queues. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
How does it work in your home then when you're discussing politics, especially with your young son, Nigel?
Well, I mean, we discuss politics rather than argue about it. Both of us are political professionals. We've been in the game a long time, so we understand that. So we're more keen on what is actually going on and how things are working out than clashing over opinions. Now, Claire is a Tory Brexiteer. I'm a Labour Remainer.
Do you think relationships like your own are going to become less and less common?
I think they are, and I think we can see that politics has become very divided, it's become very toxic, and we've lost that art of debating. I'm more than happy to speak to anybody on any subject to do with politics, because I think it's only healthy to listen to someone's opinion. You may not agree with it, you may think that they're ridiculous. However, I think it's really important that you hear those views, because if you only become encased in a bubble of your own opinion, you're never going to learn anything. And I think politics needs that. You need to be able to explore other sides of an argument. It also makes you better at arguing.
Yeah.
And Nigel and I constantly disagree on various bits and pieces, but you learn how to place your argument so much better because you know what the other side are thinking. Now, if we had that across the country and across the House of Commons, we could have so much better debate and so many better different opinions coming through, and it would be a lot healthier.
And polite debate, which always strikes me about you two. You disagree on most things when it comes to politics, but you do so with so much humour and so much respect for one another.
Well, we find politics fun, and so when we bring politics into the home, we want to have fun with it too.
Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. 3:39 is your time. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now, later in the show, I'll talk about the town in Bulgaria that's been built entirely on the back of the biggest benefits fraud Britain has ever seen. An astonishing story, an entire town built off your taxpayers' money. Now, Donald Trump is about to speak to the media after he was found guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records. And believe me, you will not want to miss what's expected to be his most explosive media address in absolutely years. Before that, German police have shot a man who attacked members of a German anti-Islamist group. Footage on YouTube shows the assailants stabbing a man and a police officer during a raid in Mannheim Market Square. It was hosted by Michael Sturzenberger from a group called the Citizens Movement Pax Europa. Well, I'm joined now by our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. Truly horrific set of images, just once again outlining the danger to people who speak out against Islam. Fill us in on the details in this case.
Well, members of Michael Sturzenberger's party, the BPE, which has been campaigning on among other things, the dangers associated with the Islamisation of Germany. They believe that Michael Sturzenberger was deliberately targeted. He was just about to address this rally in Mannheim city centre, in the Market Central Square there when the attack happened. Footage apparently showed him being stabbed. Then members of the rally team, other members of the BPE party, pulling this attacker away from Mr. Sturzenberger, and then at some point the attacker is seen getting up and launching another attack on the leader of the BPE before then moving towards a police officer who we believe had mistaken one of the victims for the suspect and had that person on the ground. Well, that police officer was then stabbed by the attacker at that point, stabbed in the neck, and according to the police, suffered significant injuries. As for Michael Sturzenberger, he has undergone, we're told, emergency surgery to stab wounds to the face and to the leg, but no further update on his condition. And no word yet from the police about the motivation behind this attack. But as I say, Martin, the party, the BPE, are in no doubt that this was a targeted attack because of Michael Sturzenberger's outspoken views on the dangers of Islamist extremists.
A truly horrific story. Mark White, thank you for bringing us up to speed. And of course, we'll have more details as and when we know the status of those casualties. Thank you, Mark White. Now let's do something a little different, a little lighter, because if you're a horse racing fan, then it's one of the best times of the year. I'm going to cross live to Epsom ahead of today's big race, the Oaks. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello again, here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. As we head into the weekend, and whilst it won't be completely dry, there will be a good deal of fine and settled weather around, and also some warm sunshine too, because of high pressure that is going to continue to extend its way in from the west. Like I said though, not completely dry, and that's the theme that we've had through today. Some outbreaks of rain in southeast, most of these though clearing away as we go through the evening and overnight. A few outbreaks of rain across the north of Scotland, otherwise it is going to be a mostly dry night, a bit cloudy towards eastern parts, clearer skies further west, and where we see some clear skies, I'm expecting temperatures to just about dip into single figures, and there could be the odd pocket of mist and fog first thing tomorrow. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, it is going to be a mostly fine day. Still some lingering cloud across eastern parts of Scotland first thing, and there could be a few outbreaks of rain here. Further west though, a largely dry, bright and sunny story as we go through the morning and into the afternoon as well. Perhaps a bit of cloud at times across Northern Ireland may bring the odd spot of rain, but on the whole a mostly fine picture here, and a similar mostly fine story for Wales and Western England. However, across eastern England we may still have some cloud lingering from today, and that could bring a little bit of drizzly rain, but that is likely to clear away as we go through the morning, and things should brighten up quite nicely. We may see a bit of cloud building in other areas where it starts sunny, and as a result we could also see a couple of showers developing, but most places are going to stay dry and at times quite bright. A bit of a breeze, but it won't be as strong as today, and with that feeling a bit warmer too, temperatures more widely in the high teens or low 20s. As we go through later on tomorrow, we are going to stick with the mostly dry picture, just one or two showers, but most places are going to avoid these. Some clear skies overnight into Sunday could again allow for some mist and fog patches, but for most, Sunday's going to be a fine day before some rain starts to push in to the far northwest later. Bye-bye.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The People's
Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 3:46. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, viewers can now see pictures live from New York City, where Donald Trump will speak to the media at around 4 o'clock today. He's, of course, expected to come out fighting and swinging after his conviction yesterday following his hush money trial. He was found guilty, of course, on all 34 4 counts. He called that a disgraceful, rigged trial. And you've already been getting in touch in your droves on this topic via gbnews.com/your say. Dom says this: if Donald Trump goes to prison, then the USA has a civil war on its hands. The Democrats are a disgrace, much like our Labour Party, with similar tactics here. For the benefit of the USA and for world peace, Donald Trump needs to win. Owen adds this: this is truly shocking. A Democrat judge supported by a Democrat prosecution who refused to allow the defence to provide certain evidence in the most pro-Democrat city around, with most likely a full Democrats jury. They found Trump guilty. Is this truly what you would call a fair political verdict? No opinions should be involved at all from politics. This shames America. And quickly, Kathy adds this: if Trump goes to jail, does that mean that his security detail, which is granted to all former presidents, has to go to jail too? And we spoke to Sebastian Gorka earlier in this hour. He used to advise Donald Trump, of course, in the White House. He was saying that DonaldTrump.com, the website, has gone into meltdown. People trying to send donations after that verdict live. They simply can't get through to the website. And Nigel Farage earlier today, he said this would be the biggest boost possible in the campaign trail. Now let's move on to another story. Let's move on to our top story today, and that is Sir Keir Starmer has said Diane Abbott is free to stand as a Labour candidate in the next general election. And it comes after a long row over the future of Britain's first black woman MP. Ms Abbott had been expected to be overlooked after she lost the whip last year, after she suggested that Jewish, Irish and traveller people experience prejudice but not racism. Well, joining me now to discuss this is former Labour Party advisor Scarlett Maguire. Ahead of Scarlett getting up, let's just go back over the details of that letter that Diane Abbott sent to The Observer on the 23rd of April 2023. She said it is true that many types of white people with points of difference, such as redheads, can experience this prejudice, the prejudice of racism, she meant. But they are not all their lives subject to racism. In pre-civil rights America, Irish people, Jewish people and travellers were not required to sit at the back of the bus, thereby basically saying racism against Jewish people doesn't exist. Well, to discuss this now, I'm joined by former Labour Party advisor Scarlett Maguire. Scarlett, welcome to the show. We've lost an entire week of the campaign trail the Labour Party has talking about this, and it first seemed that Sir Keir Starmer was going to do a Corbyn on Abbott and kick her out of the party, to clean the party up, to change it, as he said. And then Angela Rayner complained, Anna Sarwar complained, 6 union chiefs pushed back, and it seems that softened Sir Keir Starmer's stance. He's done another U-turn. I put it to you, if Sir Keir Starmer can't stand up to Angela Rayner, Diane Abbott, Anna Sarwar and the union chiefs, how on earth can he be expected to stand up to Vladimir Putin or Kim Jong-un?
Right, well, that's a nice Tory line that you've got, Martin. Let's get the facts right.
No, it's a serious question.
I am being really serious, and I just don't think you are. Let's get the facts right. Diane Abbott apologised as soon as there was a fuss about that letter, right? She then did, and there was then an investigation into it. She was asked to do a 2-hour anti-Semitism training course. She did that, and from then on, well, that's fine. If you're not allowed...
So in 2 hours, you're suddenly not anti-Semitic?
I do not think that Diane Abbott is anti-Semitic, right? I don't think she's anti-Semitic. What she was trying to say, right, and she said it very, very badly, and she apologised, is she was saying that for black people, the minute you see them, you know you're black, and that in the south of America, they were put in the back of the bus. That does not mean that there isn't incredible discrimination against Jewish people. But saying that about black people does not make her anti-Semitic. However, she did the training. That's what she was asked to do. She was asked to apologise, which she'd already done. She was asked to do the training. And now, not because of the unions or Angela Rayner, actually, partly because of the media fuss, but now, quite rightly, she's allowed to stand because she's apologized. That's what people do. They do things wrong and they apologize.
Scarlett, do you think, let's just flip some of the meanings around in this letter. Do you think, for example, I don't know, if she said black people can't experience racism because they didn't experience the Holocaust, do you think that kind of logic would be allowed to be reprogrammed with a 2-hour online training course?
No, Martin, that's not what she said, was it? Let's get what she said straight. What she said was that for black people, they had to sit at the back of the bus, and that for Jews and travellers, let's not leave travellers out of it. It's not just Jews, right? Let's not have a hierarchy of racism. Let's not pretend that travellers aren't.
But Diane Abbott made a hierarchy of racism in her letter to the Observer. That's precisely the point.
She was trying very, very clumsily, for which she has apologized. She was trying to say that there is a difference in perception. And actually, you know, a lot of key Jews I have spoken to about this before and after, right? I mean, I remember working for Jewish policy research and saying, when I did an anti-Semitism survey with them, saying, it's really tough for you, much tougher being black because you're always black, right? That's what she was trying to say. She said it very badly, right? It's not that there isn't that there isn't anti-Semitism, right? And it's not that the Holocaust didn't happen. But what she said is I apologize. I didn't mean to say that. And I just do not think that Diane Abbott is anti-Semitic, right? And most Jews don't either.
OK, that's that then. It's all sorted. Thank you for joining us, Scarlett Maguire. Always a delight to have your company, former Labour Party advisor. Well, don't go anywhere, because in a few minutes' time we'll hear live and direct from Donald Trump. He's expected to come out swinging, absolutely fighting after he was found guilty of falsifying business records, guilty on all 34 counts. The world awaits a press conference live and direct in around 5 minutes' time, live on GB News with me, Martin Daubney. But before all of that, it's time for your weather, and it's Alex Burkill.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, here's your latest GB News weather update, brought to you by the Met Office. As we head into the weekend, and whilst it won't be completely dry, there will be a good deal of fine and settled weather around, and also some warm sunshine too, because of high pressure that is going to continue to extend its way in from the west. Like I said though, not completely dry, and that's the theme that we've had through today. Some outbreaks of rain in southeast, most of these though clearing away as we go through the evening and overnight. A few outbreaks of rain across the north of Scotland, otherwise it is going to be a mostly dry night, a bit cloudy towards eastern parts, clearer skies further west, and where we see some clear skies, I'm expecting temperatures to just about dip into single figures, and there could be the odd pocket of mist and fog first thing tomorrow. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, it is going to be a mostly fine day. Still some lingering cloud across eastern parts of Scotland first thing, and there could be a few outbreaks of rain here. Further west, though, a largely dry, bright and sunny story as we go through the morning and into the afternoon as well. Perhaps a bit of cloud at times across Northern Ireland may bring the odd spot of rain, but on the whole, a mostly fine picture here, and a similar mostly fine story for Wales and Western England. However, across eastern England, we may still have some cloud lingering from today, and that could bring a little bit of drizzly rain, but that is likely to clear away as we go through the morning, and things should brighten up quite nicely. We may see a bit of cloud building in other areas where it starts sunny, and as a result, we could also see a couple of showers developing, but most places are going to stay dry and at times quite bright. A bit of a breeze, but it won't be as strong as today, and with that, feeling a bit warmer too, temperatures more widely in the high teens or low 20s. As we go through later on tomorrow, we are going to stick with the mostly dry picture, just 1 or 2 showers, but most places are going to avoid these. Some clear skies overnight into Sunday could again allow for some mist and fog patches, but for most, Sunday's going to be a fine day before some rain starts to push in to the far northwest later. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
the latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon to you. Hello, I'm Jules Buckley. Let's go to Edinburgh firstly, and some queues on the eastbound M8 around the turn off of Hermiston Gate. That's junction 1. There's a breakdown there causing queues, a lane shut. Now in County Durham, the A1M still closed both ways this afternoon. No way through between Carville, junction 62, and Chesterless Street at 63. That's due to an earlier collision, still causing queues, that one. The earlier bump southbound down the M6 has cleared from the Broughton interchange, junction 32, down to Longridge at 31A, but it's still slow going. All lanes are back open though. If you're heading for the anti-clockwise, M25, long queues, Leatherhead at 9 to Godstone at 6 in the roadworks. Anti-clockwise also stop-start for a good 40 minutes. We're still seeing queues heading towards the Dartford tunnels there this afternoon. And for now, that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you can win a whopping £20,000 cash. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. You've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. Now, coming up, last night, Donald Trump was found guilty on all 34 charges in his hush money trial, but he blasted it as a rigged, disgraceful trial. You can see live pictures on your screen now because the former president is due to address the world any minute now, what promises to be his most explosive press conference ever. And GB News will be there for you live and direct from Trump Tower. Back in Britain, Rishi Sunak's nationwide tour continues, and today the Prime Minister's in the northwest. But while a new poll shows voters like his policies on pensions and national service, they're not quite warming to the Prime Minister. Do the Tories have a Rishi problem? And while the other political parties have slogged it out on policy, Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey has been wooing voters by falling off paddleboards, getting on his bike and flying down a water slide. Now, Ed's final stunt of the week is expected later this hour. What will it be? On a trapeze in a tutu? We've got a ringside seat at the Ed Davey Circus. And yesterday, 5 Bulgarians were jailed after fleecing British taxpayers of over £50 million in benefit frauds. We'll have staggering pictures of a town, an entire town built in Bulgaria, entirely paid for by embezzled benefits handouts. And that's all coming up between now and 6 o'clock. Now, remember, any moment now we're about to hear from Donald Trump from Trump Tower very, very shortly. He's expecting to come out blasting back at his critics. What does this mean for the future of America? Guilty on all 34 counts. We spoke to Seb Gorka earlier in this hour, former White House advisor to Trump. He said Trump's website is in meltdown by people trying to donate. Hollywood blockbuster politics. Meanwhile, back in Britain, though, things have been a bit more, well, Mickey Mouse. As you can see here, here's Rishi Sunak, pictured yesterday in Milton Keynes. One of those beautiful photographs they get from an unflattering angle. There he is, from Mickey Mouse degrees. Do we have a Mickey Mouse Prime Minister? Now, I want to hear from you all the usual ways ahead of that Trump press conference, especially. What on earth is going on in American politics? Is the entire game being taken apart by the judiciary? Send your comments, gbnews.com/your say. But before all of that, it's your headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Martin, thank you. Well, as we stand by for those events to unfold at Trump Tower in New York and Donald Trump to bring us that news conference, we will bring you up to date with the latest UK news. Sir Keir Starmer has today given the green light to Diane Abbott to stand as a Labour candidate in the general election in July. It's put an end to days of confusion over the matter, which threatened to overshadow Labour's campaign. Miss Abbott had the whip restored this week after a long suspension, but claimed she'd been banned from standing as a candidate and accused Keir Starmer of culling the party's left wing. But he hit back, saying she can stand with the party.
Labour and a vote for Labour is a chance to end that chaos, to turn a page, to change for the better of the country, to change our NHS, to change our public services, to make sure our economy is stable, to make sure our communities are cared for, and to move forward and rebuild our country. That is the choice. I accept not a single vote has been cast. I'm humble about this, and I know every vote must be earned. But the power now, under our democracy, is with the voters.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer also said today his party is going to fix Britain's economy. He outlined a series of plans to cut household bills. Speaking at an event in Scotland, the Labour leader said the new publicly owned GB Energy would cut costs and speed up the transition to clean power. Urging his supporters to vote for change, he said that while the former Tory PM Liz Truss had lost control of the economy, Labour's plans could be trusted. The Prime Minister dismissed it as a vanity project. Meanwhile, police are appealing to the public for information as a 9-year-old girl remains in a critical condition in hospital today following a drive-by shooting in East London. 3 men who were sitting outside a restaurant were also injured during the incident and taken to hospital. One of them is facing life-changing injuries. Police investigating the shooting are appealing for information about the motorbike used in the attack. They say it was a Ducati Monster with a white body, red chassis and red wheels, stolen from a property in Wembley in 2021. They're urging the public to come forward or contact Crime Stoppers. Now, free school meals would be given to all primary school children under a pledge by the Liberal Democrats. The party is saying it's going to fund the plan by introducing a tax on share buybacks. The scheme would be introduced immediately for children living in poverty before being phased in for all children. So Ed Davey says too many children are going to school on empty stomachs. Now, as we stand by for that news conference at Trump Tower in New York, let's bring you up to date with events in Donald Trump's trial. If you were watching last night, you'll have seen he was found guilty of falsifying records, business records, that is, to cover up a sex scandal in a historic turnaround from commander-in-chief to convicted criminal. No former serving US president has ever been convicted of a crime before, nor impeached for that matter. It comes as polls suggest a tight race for the White House against Joe Biden, though around 13% of Trump's supporters have indicated they might not vote for him if he was found guilty. Still expecting to hear from Donald Trump at that news conference in New York. We can see there the live pictures coming to us as Donald Trump steps to the podium. Let's listen in to what he has to say.
A case where if they can do this to me, they can do this to anyone. These are bad people. These are, in many cases, I believe, sick people. When you look at our country, what's happening where millions and millions of people are flowing in from all parts of the world, not just South America, from Africa, from Asia, from the Middle East. and they're coming in from jails and prisons, and they're coming in from mental institutions and insane asylums. They're coming in from all over the world into our country. And we have a president and a group of fascists that don't want to do anything about it, because they could right now, today, he could stop it. But he's not. They're destroying our country. Our country is in very bad shape, and they're very much against me saying these things. They want to raise your taxes by 4 times. They want to stop you from having cars with their ridiculous mandates that make it impossible for you to get a car or afford a car, but make it very possible for China to build all of our cars. It's a very serious problem that we have. We just went through one of many experiences where we had a conflicted judge, highly conflicted. There's never been a more conflicted judge. Now, I'm under a gag order, which nobody's ever been under. No presidential candidate's ever been under a gag order before. I'm under a gag order, nasty gag order, where I've had to pay thousands of dollars in penalties and fines and was threatened with jail. Think of it. I'm the leading candidate. I'm leading Biden by a lot, and I'm leading the Republicans to the point where that's over. So I'm the leading person for president, and I'm under a gag order by a man that can't put 2 sentences together, given by a court, and they are in total conjunction with the White House and the DOJ, just so you understand. This is all done by Biden and his people. Maybe his people, more importantly. I don't know if Biden knows too much about it, because I don't know if he knows about anything. But he's nevertheless the president, so we have to use his name. And this is done by Washington, and nobody's ever seen anything like it. So we have a judge who's highly conflicted. You know what the confliction is. Nobody wants to write about it, and I'm not allowed to talk about it. If I do, he said, I get put in jail. So we'll play that game a little bit longer. We won't talk about it, but you're allowed to talk about it. I hope you do, because there's never been anybody so conflicted as this. As far as the trial itself, it was very unfair. We weren't allowed to use our election expert under any circumstances. You saw what happened to some of the witnesses that were on our side. They were literally crucified by this man who looks like an angel, but he's really a devil. He looks so nice and soft. People say, oh, he seems like such a nice man. No, unless you saw him in action. And you saw that with a certain witness that went through hell. And when we wanted to do things, he wouldn't let us do those things. But when the government wanted something, they got everything. They got everything they wanted. It was a rigged trial. We wanted a venue change where we could have a fair trial. We didn't get it. We wanted a judge change. We wanted a judge that wasn't conflicted. And obviously he didn't do that. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We had a DA who was a failed DA. Crime is rampant in New York, violent crime. That's what he's really supposed to be looking at. Crime is rampant in New York. Yesterday in McDonald's, you had a man hitting him up with machetes, a machete. Whoever can imagine even a machete being wielded in a store, in a place where they're eating, and he's going rampant. And Bragg is down watching a trial on what they call crimes. They're falsifying business records. That sounds so bad. To me, it sounds very bad. You know, it's only a misdemeanor, but to me, it sounds so bad. When they say falsifying business, that's a bad thing for me. I've never had that before. I'm falsifying. You know what falsifying business records is? In the first degree. They say falsifying business records. Sounds so good, right? It means that legal expense, I paid a lawyer, totally legal. I paid a lawyer a legal expense. And a bookkeeper, without any knowledge from me, correctly marked it down in the books. A very professional woman, highly respected, she testified. Marked it down in the books as a legal expense. So a legal expense, paid a lawyer, is a legal expense in the books. It's not sheetrock, construction, or any other thing. It's a legal expense. Think of that. This is what the falsification of business records were. And I said, what else are you going to call it? What else are you going to call it? Now, I would have testified. I wanted to testify. The theory is you never testify, because as soon as you testify, anybody, if it were George Washington, don't testify, because they'll get you on something that you said slightly wrong, and then they sue you for perjury. But I didn't care about that. I wanted to. But the judge allowed them to go into everything that I was ever involved in, not this case, everything that I was ever involved in, which is a first. In other words, you could go into every single thing that I ever did. Was he a bad boy here? Was he a bad boy there? And my lawyer said, what do you need to go through? And all you wanted to do is testify simply on this case. Because I would have loved to have testified. To this day, I would have liked to have testified. But you would have said something out of whack, like it was a beautiful sunny day and it was actually raining out. And I very much appreciate the big crowd of people outside. That's incredible what's happening. The level of support has been incredible. So the whole thing is legal expense was marked down as legal expense. Think of it. This is the crime that I committed, that I'm supposed to go to jail for 187 years for. When you have violent crime all over this city at levels that nobody's ever seen before, where you have businesses leaving, and businesses are leaving because of this, because heads of businesses say, man, we don't want to get involved with that. I could go through the books of any business person in this city, and I could find things that, in theory, I guess, let's indict him, let's destroy his life. But I'm out there, and I don't mind being out there, because I'm doing something for this country, and I'm doing something for our Constitution. It's very important, far beyond me. And this can't be allowed to happen to other presidents. It should never be allowed to happen in the future. But this is far beyond me. This is bigger than Trump. This is bigger than me. This is bigger than my presidency. And the people understand it, because I just see a poll just came out, the Daily Mail. That was the first one, came out, was done last night right after the verdict, where I'm up 6 points. 6 points from what we already were. We were leading fairly substantially. We're up 6 points in the Daily Mail poll. Now, maybe other polls come out and it says something differently. But a lot of people have predicted it, because the public understands, and they understand what's going on. This is a scam. There's a rigged trial. It shouldn't have been in that venue. We shouldn't have had that judge. He should have allowed us to have an election expert. We had the best expert, most respected expert, head of the Federal Elections Commission. He was all set to testify. He was waiting for 2 days. And when it was his turn, Bragg's people protested, and the judge knocked him out, said you can't testify. He actually said you can't testify for anything having to do with the trial. You can say what the federal elections is. Well, that doesn't help. Everybody knows that. But you can't testify. So essentially, he wasn't able to testify. Other people weren't able to testify. But with these people, they were able to use people salacious. By the way, and nothing ever happened. There was no anything. Nothing ever happened, and they know it. But they were as salacious as they could be, and it had nothing to do with the case, but it had to do with politics. And do you notice the timing? The timing was perfect. This case was dead. It was dropped by every agency, every governmental board. It was dropped by the highly respected Southern District. They said, no, there's no case here. It was dropped by federal election, and that's what it's about. This is about a federal election, not a state election. You're not even allowed to look at it. They took the state and the city, and they went into a federal election. They're not allowed. The people from federal election, Southern District, and Washington dropped the case. Everybody dropped the case. There was no case. Cy Vance dropped the case. And when Bragg came in, he said, this is the most ridiculous case I've ever seen. And who would have a certain person, again, gag order, who would have a certain person like this ever testify? He said, this is essentially one of the worst people I've ever seen, ever, to testify. He said, the craziest case I've ever seen. This is Bragg. Then when I announced I was running for president, long time later, they decided to revive this case. And they got a judge, Judge Marchand, who was responsible for another case that was also brought. It destroyed the life of a very good man, by the way. Destroyed the life of a very good man who went to prison once, and then they just put him in prison again because they said he lied. He didn't lie. I looked at the statements he made. In fact, he didn't remember something, and they put him in jail. Again, they've destroyed him. With me for many years, he was an honorable person. He was an honest man. And if you look at what he did, supposedly, it never happened. There's never been anything like this. Over the education of his grandchildren. Over, he didn't report that he had a car or 2 cars on his income. I don't know. I wonder how many people here have cars. I wonder how many people said, oh, gee, I have a car that's worth X dollars. How do you even figure it? And I guess you do have to report it, but I would say probably almost nobody does. Nobody even thinks about it. They put this man, they destroyed this man, but they put him in jail again because they didn't want him to testify. They didn't want him to testify. That's why he went to jail. They put him in jail twice. He's 77 years old. Now, normally I'd say that's an old guy, but I don't feel 77. Nobody ever says that about me. I'd like them to say, gee, we have to have a little sorrow for this man, because they just don't say that about me, but maybe I'm better off that way. I think I'm probably better off that way. But they put him in jail twice. And you have to see what they put him in jail. And he was threatened by the judge. This man was told, you're going to get 15 years in jail if you don't give up Trump. And he was told that. You're going to get 15 years in jail. And he made a plea deal because he didn't want to spend the rest of his life. And he was told that viciously. We're living in a fascist state. He was told that viciously. So you can go to jail for 4 months, 5 months, or you can get 15 years in jail. So do a plea. Almost who wouldn't do that plea? Everyone does those pleas. It's a horrible thing. There's a whole group of lawyers that fight that. It's so unfair. It's so unfair. But they destroyed his life. So many other things. You look at Southern District didn't want to bring the case. Nobody wanted to bring the case. And then you know who didn't want to bring the case most of all is Bragg. Bragg didn't want to bring it. But then he brought it. And they tried to make it a different case. They didn't say legal expense equal legal expense. Again, if I wrote down and paid a lawyer, and by the way, this was a highly qualified lawyer. Now, I'm not allowed to use his name because of the gag order. But, you know, he's a sleazebag. Everybody knows that. Took me a while to find out. But he was effective. He did work. But he wasn't a fixer. He was a lawyer. You know, they like to use the word fixer. He wasn't a fixer. He was a lawyer. At the time, he was a fully accredited lawyer. Now, he got into trouble not because of me. He got into trouble because he made outside deals, and he had something to do with taxi cabs and medallions, and he borrowed money. And that's why he went. And then he pled to three election violations. And as soon as I saw that, I said, I wonder why he did that. He pled. He took a deal. Now, he took a deal because he wanted to get off. In other words, I'll take a plea deal, and I want to get off. And he wanted to make a deal with the Southern District. And they wrote the worst report I think I've ever seen on any human being, other than the report that was written on James Comey by the Inspector General, a very great Inspector General, actually, wrote a report that was so bad. This one was possibly worse. The Southern District, the judge didn't let us use it. He said, it's hearsay. I said, it's not hearsay. Wouldn't let us use it. This is about the man. But he got in trouble for a very simple reason, because he was involved with borrowing a lot of money, and he did something with the banks. I don't know if it's defrauded the banks, but something happened. You guys know what it is. And then in addition to that, he gave up on 3 things where he wasn't guilty. In fact, they were going to testify in that. The head of the FEC, the Brad Smith, the election expert. Number one rated in the country, who was going to testify. He took a plea on 3 things. He just added them in because that gave him more bargaining power with respect to me. But the 3 things that he pled on, having to do with the election and having to do essentially a little bit with me, they weren't crimes. They weren't crimes. Nor is paying money under an NDA. So we have an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. It's a big deal, a non-disclosure agreement. Totally honorable, totally good, totally accepted. Everybody has them. Every company has non-disclosure agreements. But the press called it slush fund and all sorts of other things. Hush money, hush money. It's not hush money. It's called a non-disclosure agreement. And most of the people in this room have a non-disclosure agreement with their company. It's a disgrace. So it's not hush money. It's a non-disclosure agreement, totally legal, totally common. Everyone has it. And what happened is he signed a non-disclosure agreement with this person, I guess other people, but it's totally honest. You're allowed to make the payment. You don't have to make it. You can make it any way you want. It's a non-disclosure agreement. And he signed that. And there was nothing wrong with signing it. And this should have been a non-case. And everybody said it was a non-case, including Bragg. Bragg said, until I ran for office. And then they saw the polls. I was leading the Republicans. I was leading the Democrats. I was leading everybody. And all of a sudden, they brought it back. It's a very sad thing that's happening in our country. And it's a thing that I'm honored. In a way, I'm honored. It's not that it's pleasant. It's very bad for family. It's very bad for friends and businesses. But I'm honored to be involved in it because somebody has to do it. And I might as well keep going and be the one. But I'm very honored to be involved because we're fighting for our Constitution. The money that was paid legally. There was nothing illegal. In fact, the lawyer in creating the NDA, because at that time he was a fully accredited lawyer. He wasn't a fixer. I never thought of him as a fixer. The media called him a fixer, or the prosecutors called him a fixer. He was a lawyer, and he was fairly good. Later on, I didn't like what he did. I didn't like, for instance, I didn't like that when I became president, he went around and made deals with companies. When I heard that, he was gone. He was gone. And he had payments coming to him, and a lot of this involved things that are very simple. There was nothing wrong. This was standard stuff, all standard stuff. Everything involved was standard. There was no crime here. In fact, I just watched a couple of the reports. You watched Jonathan Turley, Andy McCarthy, Greg Jarrett. You look at all of these people, Mark Levin, all very talented people, great people, many more. And they don't know me, essentially. They don't know me. They're legal scholars and experts. But I look at them. I watched Turley this morning saying, there's no crime here. Everybody says there's no crime here, except for this DA that's got the city out of control with crime. It's absolutely out of control. So we have an NDA that was signed. We have legal expenses. And here's the thing on legal expenses. You have 100 where they say, they do a charge. I just recorded this out. Falsification of business records in the first degree. It sounds so bad. I said, wow. And even my own lawyers, I get very upset with them because they don't say what it is. They say, well, falsification of legal records is only a felony. Well, that's a lot. Is only they say a misdemeanor. But they try and bring it up to a felony if there's 2 crimes. They have all these different things. The other thing is they missed the statute of limitations by a lot because this was very old. They could have brought this 7 years ago instead of bringing it right in the middle of the election. So they missed the statute of limitations. They did everything. Now, let me give you the good news. The good news is last night, we just got a report this morning, in the history of politics, I believe, maybe I'm wrong, somebody will find that I'm wrong, maybe, but I don't think so. They raised with small money donors, meaning like $21, $42, $53, $38, a record $39 million in about a 10-hour period. No, think of that. I like those people. Because so far, I guess it's backfiring. Now, I don't know. I'd rather not have it happen. I don't want to have it backfiring. I don't want to win this thing legitimately, not because they were stupid and did things that they shouldn't be doing. They shouldn't have brought this case. They were saying it this morning. This is a case that should not have been brought. I watched Andy McCarthy say this is a case that should not have been brought. And that was this morning. But they all say that. Every legal scholar has said it. And these are great people. They really understand the law. The other thing, a poll just came out. The first poll, I don't know, maybe others will be bad. But a poll just came out a little while ago. The Daily Mail. Does anybody read the Daily Mail? It's very good. They have a good poll. At least I like it today. And the Daily Mail just came out with a poll, and it has Trump up 6 points in the last 12 hours. 6 points. 6 points since this happened. Who thought this could happen? Because the people of our country know it's a hoax. They know it's a hoax. They get it. You know, they're really smart, and it's really something. So we're going to be appealing this scam. We're going to be appealing it on many different things. He wouldn't allow us to have witnesses. He wouldn't allow us to talk. He wouldn't allow us to do anything. The judge was a tyrant. And you got to see that with Bob Costello, a fine man. I've never seen anything like it, and neither has anybody that was in that courthouse where he demanded that the courthouse be cleared. Now, the good news is most of the people in the courthouse were the media. And anybody that was in the media, if you're fair, you'll say, wow, that was anger. That was crazed. He was crazed. And the reason that Bob Costello acted a little bit upset, which I think he has a right to, was that every question he was being asked was being objected to by the other side and sustained by the judge. Sustained. I think he did it many times. I don't know what the number, many times. Even I was sitting there saying, and these were basic questions. And I never saw anybody treated that way by a judge. And I've been treated very badly by two other judges also, because it's all the same thing. And it all comes out of the White House. Crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country. He's the worst president in the history of our country. The most incompetent. He's the dumbest president we've ever had. He's the dumbest president, most incompetent president, and he's the most dishonest president we've ever had. And so many of he's a Manchurian candidate. You take a look at the way he treats China, Russia, so many others. You know, I ended the Russian pipeline. It was dead. He comes in and he approves it. And he gets $3.5 million, meaning $3.5 million is paid to the family, his family, from the mayor of Moscow's wife. And I said, where did that come from? Nobody wants to talk about it. But he's a very big danger to our country. And the only way they think they can win this election is by doing exactly what they're doing right now, win it in the courts because they can't win it at the ballot box. So we're going to show them that, we're going to fight. It's actually, I don't know, it's something where I'm wired in such a way that a lot of people would have gone away a long time ago. They would have gone away after impeachment hoax number 1. That was a total hoax. I had great support from the Republican Party, though. Then you had impeachment hoax number 2. And then they formed the committee. How about they formed the committee of thugs, the J6th Committee of Thugs. And they took their records and they destroyed all of the records after the committee was abandoned because those records were great for us. Now, can you imagine if Republicans did that? Everybody would have been in jail by now. Think of it, the unselect, I call it the unselect. They call it select committee. I call it the unselect committee of thugs. They meet. It's 100% Democrat and 2 past Republicans that are no longer Republicans, that are no longer in business anymore, thank you. But it was all Democrats and 2 wayward Republicans, Liz Cheney and crying Adam Kinzinger. He cries every time he goes on television. He's the most emotional human being I think I've ever seen. And that was our representatives. These 2 people were our rep. So they had all this stuff that they're leaking. And then when it came time to look at the records, like where the police said and the Capitol Guard said that I supplied, think of it, that I recommended as many soldiers or National Guard as you want. 10,000. If you had 500, you wouldn't have had a problem. There wouldn't have been a J6. But Nancy Pelosi and the group didn't want it. Anyway, so they have testimony to all of that, that I did not attack the Secret Service agent in the front of a car. You know, these are strong people. And I supposedly went to the driver, and I grabbed him around the neck. And he rebuffed me, and then I went to the other guy, who I think is a black belt in karate, and he's slightly younger than me, maybe 35 years, 40 years, 50 years. And I grabbed him around the neck and said, he's a black belt in karate. They know how to get somebody from around their neck. They would have gone like this, and that would be the end of that. Actually, I had a friend that said, you shouldn't dispute that. That makes you look like the toughest cookie we've ever seen. You should have let that go on. But the fact is, it never happened. It was all made up. And that was proven to be made up. It proved to be a false story. And they deleted and destroyed all of that information, every ounce of it. We're dealing with a corrupt government. We have a corrupt country. Our elections are corrupt. Our borders are open. Our borders are going to be closed very soon. November 5th is going to be the most important day in the history of our country. Now, when I say that, because my people are always saying, do this, because we're fighting for America, DonaldJTrump.com. I hope everybody watching right now, DonaldJTrump.com, because it really makes a difference. They have a lot of money on the other side. I don't know where they get it. Nobody knows where they get it. But for some reason, they get money. But they're not on the side of our country. In many ways, I think they hate our country. Who on earth can want open borders where people are allowed to pour in from countries unknown, from places unknown, from languages that we haven't even heard of? We have people sitting in schools with languages where very few people have ever even heard of these languages. It's not like Spanish or French or Russian. Languages unknown. We have people coming from corners of the globe, and many of them are not good people. Many terrorists, record levels of terrorism, record levels of terrorists have come into our country. Record. They've never seen anything like it. You know, there was a report that in 2019, I don't believe this, by the way, the media gave it, and it was good for me, believe it or not. They said in 2019, there were no terrorists recorded that came into our country. I don't believe that. I don't think that's possible. But 2019 was a Trump year. I don't believe that that could be possible. But they said no terrorists came into our country. So let's say it was close. Let's say it was close. But now record levels of terrorists, record levels, the highest level we've ever seen of terrorists are pouring into our country. You have China with just in the last few months, 29,000 people came in, and I looked at them on a line, and they look like perfect soldiers. They're almost all male, from 19 to 25. It looks like a recruiting exercise. They have beautiful tents. They have propane stoves. They have cell phones, the best you can buy. I said, what's going on? It looks like they're building an army right in our country. Now, I don't think that would happen, right? We're losing our country. And I really think that this is an event, what took place yesterday with this judge. Look, we have conflicted, but he's a crooked judge, and you'll understand that. And I say that knowing that it's very dangerous for me to say that, and I don't mind. because I'm willing to do whatever I have to do to save our country and to save our Constitution. I don't mind. So thank you. So we will continue the fight. We're going to make America great again. Very simple. When people fight MAGA, they say, we're going to fight. I watch Biden. We're going to fight MAGA. We're going to stop MAGA. It's make America great again. That's all it is. MAGA. Make America great again. Our country's in serious trouble. We owe $36 trillion. We were energy independent for the first time ever. And now we're begging Venezuela for oil. One statistic you have to hear. Venezuela was crime-ridden. Caracas, the cities, crime-ridden. 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They just reported a 72% drop in crime in the last year because all of their criminals, most of them, and the rest are coming in now, the ones that didn't come in. In Venezuela, their prisons have been emptied into the United States. Their criminals and drug dealers have been taken out of the cities and brought into the United States. And that's true with many other countries. The Congo has just released a lot of people from jail. Congo, Africa, just released a lot of people from their prisons and jails and brought them into the United States of America. This is what's happening to our country. And it's not sustainable by anyone. Little things like our kids can't have a Little League game anymore because you have tents and you have migrants living on the fields. That's the least of it. People are taking over our luxury hotels, migrants, and yet our veterans, our great veterans, are living on the streets. Like dogs, they're living on the streets. But migrants are living in luxury hotels and cities all over our country, run by Democrats. So it's my honor to be doing this. It really is. It's a very unpleasant thing, to be honest. But it's a great, great honor. We're gonna do what I have to do. I'm going to do it. And the support has been, that's why I mentioned the number of $39 million. That's why I mentioned we're up 6 points. And we went up a lot over the last month because everybody saw it was a rigged deal. It was a rigged trial. But we're going to make America great again. We're going to make it better than ever before. November 5th, remember, November 5th is the most important day in the history of our country. Thank you very much, everybody.
OK, that was Donald Trump. And if you thought he was going to go quietly, think again, addressing the world's media there at Trump Tower. A few quick points for those of us just joining us. He started off by saying, if this can happen to me, then this can happen to anybody. This is bigger than Trump. This is bigger than my presidency. He went on to tell us he'd raised $39 million in 10 hours directly after that trial was concluded. He said he'd gone up 6 points in polls in the Daily Mail. He will be appealing. America, he said, we live in a fascist state. So I'm now joined in the studio by James Hill, political commentator, who very patiently sat through all of that. If anybody thought Donald Trump was going to meekly come out and say, I better not break my gagging order, wow, they're in for a big surprise. He came out guns blazing.
Absolutely. It's a vintage Trump turning this decision by the court into a referendum on himself. And that's what he's making November the 5th, repeatedly referred to that presidential election date. That's what he's making it all about, because he knows that out there he's got millions of supporters across the country. And the initial snap reaction is, according to that poll he kept citing by the Daily Mail, he's gone up in the polls by 6 points as a result of this. So he is going to be using this as a way of kind of fundraising, getting the publicity behind him and ensuring that his base turns out on November the 5th.
And he's long played that position of everybody is against me, the entire system is against me. The political system, we've known, is now turning his sights on the entire judiciary, which he said is rigged, it's bent, it's corrupt. These are words he was using, basically saying the entire system is against me and therefore is against you as a Republican, using this entire thing, as you'd expect, as a huge, huge rallying call.
Absolutely, and I think that's the real shift in Trump world since last time. 2016, of course, he won. They spent 4 years. In the 4 years since then, I think a lot of people around Donald Trump have gone a lot more sceptical and cynical about the kind of workings of this government, the deep state, the institutions of the country of America. And now, next time, they're much more kind of wary about engaging with them. And I think the argument that Trump's going to be making is, you know, Joe Biden was elected in 2020. He's not just ruined the economy, he's ruined the judiciary as well. And that's going to be very much the staple of his campaign rhetoric over the next 5 months or so.
OK, James Hill, thank you very much for your patience and staying with us. I know you have to dash off to another appointment now, and I'm joined now by the US political journalist Laurie Laird. Laurie, welcome to the show. Thank you for waiting for that long press conference to reach its conclusion. Donald Trump, in no uncertain terms, saying we live in a fascist state. He concluded by saying November the 5th is the most important day in the entire history of America. What's your take?
It was an interesting speech, and you mentioned that it's long. I was surprised. Sometimes Donald Trump can go on for 90 minutes or so. This was actually kind of succinct by his recent history. What a speech, my word. Really difficult to keep up, very wide-ranging, including the fact that crime in Venezuela has gone down so much because apparently all of the Venezuelan criminals are somehow have reached American shores, and criminals from the Congo as well. Really wide-ranging speech. But I think one thing to focus on and one thing to take a look at is that Daily Mail poll that he proudly mentioned. Let's unpack that a little bit. He says he's up 6 points. What the poll measured was, it was a brief online poll of 403 people, not a huge sample size. And they were asked, do you have a more favorable opinion of Donald Trump after this conviction or a less favorable view of Donald Trump? 22% had a more favorable view, 16% had a less favorable view. That is where that 6 point comes in. So it's a little bit misleading to say all of a sudden he's up by 6 points in some kind of matchup with Joe Biden. That's not quite what this micro poll was asking. So I think it's important to get that straight.
Now, that is an absolutely fair point. And he did also mention, again, this rallying call of donations, $39 million, he said. And he was quick to point out this was in small amounts, so lots of people throwing their money into the pot in 10 hours. As you'd expect, once again, he's using this not only as a rallying point, as a sounding board, but also as a fundraising moment. That's what he does.
Absolutely. And I think his campaign was a little bit worried about how he wouldn't be able to be out there during the time that the trial took place. He was in court 4 days a week. That does not seem to have affected his campaign in any way. I don't have any way of verifying whether those small donations were as high, accumulated to something as high as Donald Trump said. But I think something that's really important with fundraising here is that Wall Street, some of the big financial names on Wall Street, are starting to move behind Donald Trump. He lost a lot of support after January 6th, and a lot of the bigwigs on the fat cats, whatever you want to call them, on Wall Street, went a little quiet with their support. Front page of the Financial Times today, a big hedge fund manager, Bill Ackman, is saying, I am probably going to support Trump. And where Wall Street goes, some big money can follow.
And Laurie, talking of Wall Street, we can see on our screens there live pictures from the streets of New York. There's a split crowd. There's somebody holding up a sign there saying lock him up. There are some MAGAs, some Make America Great Agains hanging from lampposts shouting out. So we have those for and those against. And whatever you say about Donald Trump, he has that ability to mobilise America. I wanted to ask you, though, this key point, Laurie. Elections in Britain are won from the centre. They're not won from the right, from the left. They're won by trying to appeal to the middle ground, to the sensible, conservative centrists. Do you think that those 34 charges will put off the moderate voters, or will they be pulled into this? Oh, no, it's the entire system against Trump. It's the judiciary. It's the politicians. Everything is against them. Where do you think the moderate vote will go on this at the moment?
This is, you've posed such a good question. You're absolutely right. The rule of thumb is elections are won from the center. We're trying to see Keir Starmer here move toward the center with kind of mixed results here. Donald Trump is certainly not in the center, and he takes an entirely different strategy, doesn't he? Don't go to the center. Make sure that you rally your base. Forget about people who are in the center. Just shore up that group of people, make sure that they get out and vote for you. Now, it didn't work in 2020, but it was tight, right? That was a very, very tight election. It could work this time around. And I think one of the things we'll be looking at is voter turnout. Some of those cohorts of people, young people, ethnic minorities that came out in force for Joe Biden, will they come out for him this time around? Because he is going to need to, Biden is going to need to appeal to a very wide range to counter this great enthusiasm that Donald Trump has with his base, because you can be pretty sure that his supporters will turn out on November 5th.
And just a quick apology to anybody watching on screen. There may have been some fruity language on that screen there, but back onto the conversation here. Laurie Laird, of course, Donald Trump was very keen to steam into Joe Biden. He called him crooked Joe Biden again. He called him the dumbest, most incompetent. There's some other offensive language on the screen there. We're just trying to keep those away. This is a live protest. We're doing our best to try and control it. Apologies if you saw some bad words there. It's live television after all. Back to Joe Biden. He said, crooked Joe Biden, the dumbest, most incompetent president we ever had. He called him the Manchurian candidate in the pocket of China. He said, I don't even think he knows what's being talked about. It's fun. But can I also ask you about that? Another huge thing being talked about in America is Joe Biden's mental capacity, his competence. Is that something else that you think Donald Trump will just keep nibbling away at?
Absolutely. Look, that is a very easy way to go after Biden. I think we'll see much more of that sort of thing. It didn't help Donald Trump in the sort of mental acuity, fitness stakes when he seemed to nod off during his trial on a couple of occasions. But he does do very well at the podium. He seems much more energetic than Joe Biden at the podium. That's a real risk for Joe Biden. Joe Biden is an interesting sort of paradox, because he has got a lot of legislation through. Now, you may not agree with that legislation, but in terms of getting things through, shepherding things through Congress, he has a very, very good record. Economists might argue that these haven't been helpful things. Perhaps that's another conversation. But he has been an effective president if you look at legislation, but he's not popular. The economy had been doing very well under Biden. People don't seem to recognize that. And in fact, we're getting some signs that the economy is starting to slow. This might be a problem for Joe Biden if he wasn't getting credit for a strong economy. Now we're seeing signs of a slowdown. We're probably not going to get an interest rate cut. This is another vulnerability for Joe Biden. But I think we've got to don't look at the national polls, right? This election, because of the electoral system, will be decided in 5 or 6 states. Got to look at the polling in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. This is where this election will be decided.
And Laurie, could I ask you about the gagging order? I mean, before the trial even began, Donald Trump was very, very personally attacked the judge, Juan Merchan, right from the first bat, before he even got in the courtroom. And now this judge holds the future, potentially, of the country in his hands. If he decides, because it's down to him. He's now responsible. He can decide whether Donald Trump is imprisoned or not. Now, Donald Trump, of course, will most likely appeal and try and push this back beyond November the 5th, so maybe it's a technicality. But if anybody thought today, maybe Trump's advisor said, you might want to go a bit easy on the judge, you're under a gagging order, and yet he was saying this guy is highly conflicted. He called him a tyrant. He said he might look like an angel, but actually he's a devil.
Yeah, he really has had some choice words, not only for the judge, but for the judge's family as well. And I think this will form, there are a number of areas where, to my mind, what I've read, I'm not a lawyer, but a number of areas where there could be an effective appeal mounted. And I think one of the things Donald Trump's lawyers will do is look at the judge's daughter, who does work for a group of Democratic operatives, and said that may be grounds for appeal. There are a number of other grounds for appeal that, to my mind, seem to be quite feasible. Look, you can't appeal because you don't like the decision, but you can appeal on the process. And there are a number of things about this trial that were unusual. Most of all was the implication, but the prosecution never pushed this too hard, that federal election law had been broken in after these business records were falsified. That's the reason they were falsified. This mixing and matching of state and federal law is unusual. I don't think it's been tried very often before. That could be grounds for appeal, but we won't know. They have the prosecution has 30 days to file an appeal. They almost certainly will, and that appeal will start to wind its way through the system. July 11th. That's D-Day for the sentencing. It would be unusual. I don't think legal experts think that Donald Trump will be behind bars. He's old, although less old than Joe Biden, as he keeps reminding us. These are not this falsification of business records.
Yeah. Oh, Laurie Laird, we seem to have lost signal there momentarily. We've got you back. Laurie, can I quickly ask you, of course, Donald Trump's many... We still have you, lovely. Of course, Donald Trump's one of his many critics across politics and the media will be delighting at the decision, 34 counts, all guilty. A lot of celebrities, Robert De Niro, George Takei, the usual suspects, are doing a tap dance in merriment. And yet, it looks like there'll be this appeal. The money is coming in. On the balance of history, the balance of how things have gone before, how do you think this will play out with the electorate, with the body of people watching across America now? Is this going to give Trump a boost, or is it going to give him a vote down?
You know, I don't think it plays either way. I know we want to talk about something more exciting than that, but I think it will further energize his base, which was already pretty energetic. Anyway, I don't think, we saw polling a couple of months ago. If he's convicted, what will your support do? And there did seem to be a polling drop in support, but I'm not sure that will happen. I think the big risk here is that voters on both sides may get turned off by the entire process. But I don't think that this hurts Donald Trump all that much, if at all.
Yeah, I mean, as he said there, in his usual self-deprecatory way, November the 5th is the most important day in the history of America. He's quite clearly saying the entire future of the nation depends on that date. In 30 seconds, Laurie Laird, do you think he's got a point?
Yeah, I do think he has a very good point, but not for the reasons that he thinks so. I think one of the key things, the legacy of Donald Trump, is that he has sown distrust in the judiciary system in the U.S. He has sown distrust in the electoral system. And we have a significant minority of Americans who do not believe in these institutions anymore, and that's troubling.
OK, superb stuff. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Laurie Laird, expert analysis there, US political journalist. What a day in New York. Donald Trump addressing the nation from Trump Town. Wow, he came out swinging. And stay tuned for more reaction. That incredible speech by Donald Trump. I'm going to be joined by Joe Biden's former chief of staff for her reaction. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel. But before all of that, it's your weather, and it's Alex Burkill.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. As we head into the weekend, and whilst it won't be completely dry, there will be a good deal of fine and settled weather around, and also some warm sunshine too, because of high pressure that is going to continue to extend its way in from the west. Like I said though, not completely dry, and that's the theme that we've had through today. Some outbreaks of rain in southeast, most of these though clearing away as we go through the evening and overnight. A few outbreaks of rain across the north of Scotland, otherwise it is going to be a mostly dry night, a bit cloudy towards eastern parts, clearer skies further west, and where we see some clear skies, I'm expecting temperatures to just about dip into single figures, and there could be the odd pocket of mist and fog first thing tomorrow. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, it is going to be a mostly fine day. Still some lingering cloud across eastern parts of Scotland first thing, and there could be a few outbreaks of rain here. Further west, though, a largely dry, bright and sunny story as we go through the morning and into the afternoon as well. Perhaps a bit of cloud at times across Northern Ireland may bring the odd spot of rain, but on the whole, a mostly fine picture here, and a similar mostly fine story for Wales and Western England. England. However, across eastern England, we may still have some cloud lingering from today, and that could bring a little bit of drizzly rain, but that is likely to clear away as we go through the morning, and things should brighten up quite nicely. We may see a bit of cloud building in other areas where it starts sunny, and as a result we could also see a couple of showers developing, but most places are going to stay dry and at times quite bright. A bit of a breeze, but it won't be as strong as today, and with that feeling a bit warmer too, temperatures more widely in the high teens or low 20s. As we go through later on tomorrow, we are going to stick with the mostly dry picture, just 1 or 2 showers, but most places are going to avoid these. Some clear skies overnight into Sunday could again allow for some mist and fog patches, but for most, Sunday's going to be a fine day before some rain starts to push in to the far northwest later. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. The eastbound M8 in Renfrewshire still seeing queues towards Hiddington Junction 26, although all lanes are back open now following an earlier breakdown. There's a couple of issues in queues for the A1M. Firstly, on the southbound side from Wetherby 46 to Boston Spa 45, a vehicle undergoing a tyre change, slow going. There's a lane out. And also on the A1M, still closed both ways between Carville Junction 62 and Chester Street Junction 63, and big queues at the scene of a collision from the early hours of this morning. Still slow westbound for the M62 just after Huddersfield Junction 23. There was a breakdown, all the lanes open but is still queuing. A lane shut, lane 4 of 4, anti-clockwise M25 from 16 to the M4 at 15. There's a breakdown there causing delays, and that's your latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camila Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camila Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show. Here on GB News, we're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster all across the UK. Coming up, Donald Trump has come out all guns blazing after he was found guilty at the end of his hush money trial. He says he'll appeal what he has called a scam trial. Absolutely explosive interview. We'll have full analysis. Next, Sir Keir Starmer has dramatically announced that Diane Abbott is free to stand as a Labour candidate after all. Is this the right thing to do, or is this yet another dramatic U-turn from the man mocked as Mr. Flip-Flop? And we'll bring you the best and the worst of this week on the campaign trail. And don't worry, we're not just going to show you what Sir Ed Davey has been up to. Whoop, there he goes, plopping into the water. That's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. Well, what an afternoon it's been already. A short while ago, Donald Trump addressed the world from Trump Tower, and by Jove, he came out swinging. Anybody who thought he was going to meekly obey that gagging order and keep stum will be sorely disappointed. He talked about everything from the amount of money he's raised to a poll surge, as he claimed. He said America is now a fascist state, and he claimed November the 5th is the day, the most important day in American history. Well, I'll be joined by a former chief of staff for Joe Biden. Shortly, Susan Platt will join me for her reaction. Donald Trump, of course, has some choice words to say about Joe Biden, called him the most incompetent president we've ever had, and also the dumbest. We'll get full reaction on that. Get in touch. We've already got hundreds of mails on your views on Donald Trump, and get in touch. There's still time to do so. GBNews.com/Your Say is the way to do so. But before we do all of that, is your headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Well, as you've been hearing, Donald Trump said in the last hour that his criminal trial was rigged and the judge in the case was conflicted as he addressed media moments ago at Trump Tower in New York following his unprecedented conviction of all 34 counts against him last evening. It was a wide-ranging 33-minute speech to waiting news reporters and the public, Trump describing Manhattan's district attorney as corrupt and Joe Biden as a Manchurian president before pointing to what he called rampant crime in New York. He referenced America's immigration issues and its relationship with China and Russia, adding that Joe Biden was the dumbest and most incompetent US president there'd ever been, adding that he intended to lead the Republican Party to victory. The former president and convicted criminal also said the country he once led is now a fascist state and claimed he's fighting for the Constitution. Take a look.
I'm doing something for this country, and I'm doing something for our Constitution. It's very important, far beyond me. And this can't be allowed to happen to other presidents. It should never be allowed to happen in the future. But this is far beyond me. This is bigger than Trump. This is bigger than me. This is bigger than my presidency.
Well, here in the UK, Sir Keir Starmer says Labour veteran Diane Abbott is free to stand as a Labour candidate in the general election in July. It's after the MP was suspended over comments she made suggesting that Jewish, Irish and traveller people experienced prejudice but not racism. Miss Abbott had the Labour whip restored this week but is refusing to comment on Sir Keir Starmer's announcement until the Labour National Executive makes a decision about whether or not to endorse her next week. Sir Keir has said she can stand as a Labour MP.
Labour and a vote for Labour is a chance to end that chaos, to turn a page, to change for the better of the country, to change our NHS, to change our public services, to make sure our economy is stable, to make sure our communities are cared for, and to move forward and rebuild our country. That is the choice. I accept not a single vote has been cast. I'm humble about this, and I know every vote must be earned. But the power now, under our democracy, is with the voters.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer also said today that his party is going to fix Britain's economy. He outlined a series of plans to cut household bills. He was speaking at an event in Scotland and saying that the publicly owned new GB Energy entity would cut costs and speed up the transition to clean power. Urging supporters to vote for change, Sir Keir said that while the former Prime Minister Liz Truss had lost control of the economy, Labour's plans could be trusted. The Prime Minister dismissed it as a vanity project. Now, police are appealing for information from the Turkish and Kurdish communities of East London as a 9-year-old girl remains in a critical condition in hospital after a drive-by shooting. She was having dinner with her family in a restaurant in Hackney when shots were fired from outside the restaurant. 3 men were also hurt in the incident. They were sitting outside the restaurant. One of them is facing life-changing injuries. Detectives say the motorbike used in the attack was stolen from a property in Wembley in 2021, and they're urging anyone with information to come forward and speak to police or contact Crime Stoppers. And multiple people were injured after a man apparently stabbed members of the public during an online live stream event in Germany. The attacker was reportedly outside a campaign tent for the German anti-Islamist group called Citizens Movement Pax Europa before he was shot by police. The injured police officer has undergone emergency medical treatment. It's not yet known what motivated that attack. International news, and Houthi rebels in Yemen have claimed responsibility for an attack on a US aircraft carrier in the Red Sea, which they say is in response to joint UK-US strikes last night. The Prime Minister says the UK won't hesitate to protect British interests after the RAF carried out a fifth round of joint airstrikes against the Houthis, who've been targeting commercial shipping in the region. More than 600 homes in Surrey have been told not to drink their tap water after tests by Thames Water. The company says there's a possible deterioration in the quality of drinking water in some areas near there. People in the village of Bramley have been given precautionary instructions not to use their drinking water or cook with it or even brush their teeth. It comes after tests were carried out following a historical fuel leak from a petrol station which prompted complaints from locals since 2021. Better news at the zoo today. There's one particular zoo celebrating after 11 endangered baby penguins were born. That's the highest number in a decade. They're called Humboldt penguin chicks. They were born at Chester Zoo in mid-April. Experts are saying the species was most at risk of the 17 penguin types due to climate change and overfishing. They're naming this year's chicks after plants. They've got cute names like nettle, thistle, dandelion, tulip and daffodil, all among the new baby chicks. We wish them well. Well done, Chester Zoo. That's the news. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Polly. Now, there's only one place to start, of course, and that's that incredible speech by Donald Trump. It lasted more than 30 minutes, and he said he'd appeal against his conviction for falsifying business records. He also said that Joe Biden is the dumbest president of all time, and here's a taste of what he had to say.
We're up 6 points in the Daily Mail poll. Now, maybe other polls come out and says something differently, but a lot of people have predicted it because the public understands, and they understand what's going on. This is a scam. There's a rigged trial. It shouldn't have been in that venue. We shouldn't have had that judge. He should have allowed us to have an election expert. We had the best expert, most respected expert, head of the Federal Elections Commission. He was all set to testify. He was waiting for 2 days. And when it was his turn, Bragg's people protested. And the judge knocked him out, said you can't testify.
Well, Trump came out all guns blazing. You've already been in touch in your hundreds with your says. Let's go through a few of those now. Ian says this: American democracy and judicial systems are under attack with the conviction of Donald Trump. Trump, more importantly, was never going to win in New York, whether or not you believe him to be guilty or not. Sadly, he has been convicted by political means. However, Barry doesn't agree. He says this: 34 convictions, guilty, guilty, and lots more guilties. Send him down. Chris adds this: Trump derangement syndrome will now be in overdrive. The lefties will be in meltdown. I love it. Roll on the 5th of November. Go Trump, US President 2024. Whereas Terry has the opposite view. He says Donald Trump should acknowledge his mistake, take responsibility and accept the penalty. So huge amounts of emails there. Please keep them coming. Now to a huge development in the Labour Party civil war, because just over an hour ago, Sir Keir Starmer said Diane Abbott is free to stand as a Labour candidate in the general election after all. And this comes after a long row over the future of Britain's first black woman MP. Ms Abbott had been expected to be overlooked after she lost the whip last year after she suggested that Jewish, Irish and traveller people experience prejudice but not racism. But here's what Sir Keir Starmer said this afternoon.
Diane Abbott was elected in 1987, the first black woman MP. She's been a trailblazer. She has carved a path for other people to come into politics and public life. The whip has obviously been restored to her now, and she is free to go forward as a Labour candidate.
Have you spoken to Diane, and do you understand that she wants to put herself forward to stand?
She's free to go forward as a Labour candidate. The whip is back with her. It's been restored. And of course, you know, she was a trailblazer for many, many years and has cleared the path for others to come into politics. So, formally matter for the NEC, but I've not expressed a view up until now. She's free to go forward as a Labour candidate.
Well, that was Sir Keir Starmer. Let's speak now to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, welcome to the show. She joins us on the campaign trail with the Conservative Party today. Let's turn first over to this Labour Party civil war. Catherine, a week into the campaign trail for the general election, nobody's talking at all about Sir Keir Starmer's ideas on the stump for the country. The next election, instead, they're obsessing about, once again, the Labour left tearing itself apart.
Yes, it's become an almighty mess, hasn't it, this Diane Abbott row over the last few days. First of all, she said she'd been banned from standing. Then Sir Keir Starmer spent a couple of days saying, no, absolutely not, no decision has been taken. He was saying that up until and including this morning, and then at lunchtime suddenly said she's free to stand if she wishes. Now, clearly, his previous position became difficult after the deputy leader, Angela Rayner, broke rank, so to speak, yesterday and came out and said, well, I think she should be allowed to stand if she wants to. Similarly, Anas Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader. But I think what this has done has basically opened the fact that the Labour Party does still have divisions within it. Sir Keir Starmer appears to have been undergoing a bit of a purge of some on the Labour left in the last few days. Other people cast out or not allowed to stand. Other big Starmer supporters parachuted in to safe Labour seats. But it does reopen the divisions, and it has been damaging. I think they thought initially it was just a sort of Westminster bubble story that wouldn't cut through, but it has cut through. It's brought some bad headlines. A lot of people think it's not the way to treat Britain's first female black MP, who served as an MP for 37 years. So yes, this row has drowned out most of what Labour has been trying to say this week. Meanwhile, I'm with the Prime Minister here in Greater Manchester. He was in Macclesfield a little bit earlier on a farm, talking to farmers, stressing, of course, that his constituency is a rural one. And we're moving on now. We'll be in different places tomorrow. It's all a bit of a whirlwind. Just over a week into an election the Prime Minister called. None of us, to be honest, were expecting it, but here we are.
Well, you're in Manchester, a place I lived for 3 years, a place famed for its rain. Let's hope Rishi Sunak's team this time, Catherine Forster, have remembered to pack an umbrella. Catherine Forster, thank you very much. Excellent week from you, and I look forward to working with you again next week. Great stuff on the road with the Conservatives. Now, Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer will go head-to-head in the first TV debate next Tuesday evening, and Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey hasn't been invited, and he's not happy.
Well, Liberal Democrats will take part in any debate that we're allowed in. Frankly, we should be allowed into all of them, in my view. And our main messages in the election have been on the health service and care. The health service is on its knees, and it needs to be rescued, particularly with more GPs, more NHS dentists, and investment in care. But we're also talking about our economic ideas to grow our economy and also deal with the cost of living. And we're talking about the environment. That's so important. People are really angry that the Conservatives allow the water companies to pump their filthy sewage into rivers, lakes, onto beaches. So those are the sorts of things we talk about.
There's Ed Davey moaning on dry land. I think he prefers it in the water. Now, listen, I'm joined now by the former Labour MP, Stephen Pound. Stephen, always a delight to have you on the show. Let's look back at a rather eventful week in politics. We have to start, of course, with the Labour Party. Sir Keir Starmer's team must be pulling their hair out. They're a week in, and nobody's talking about what's happening on the campaign trail. They're talking about what's happening back at Labour Party HQ. Of course, I'm talking once again, something we've discussed before, Stephen, the left of the party causing a huge headache, civil war over Diane Abbott.
Well, as you can obviously see, I pulled my hair out long ago. But let's get this in perspective. There are at least a dozen Labour MPs, prospective parliamentary candidates for the Labour Party, who would certainly be described as on the far left. And we're not just talking about people like, Zahra Sultana and Oksana Begum, John McDonnell. There's any number of them. They're being allowed to stand, with that big, broad church. But look, the fact you've been an MP for 37 years doesn't give you the God-given right to be an MP forever. And I think we need to get this in a little bit of perspective. I think that people seem to be deifying Diane Abbott. I mean, some of the things she said about redheads suffering in just the same way as Jews from prejudice, it was downright silly and stupid. But hopefully we can move on from that. And today's announcements about the what I thought was virtually was GBNews, but in fact it's GB Energy that the prospective government is now promulgating. But look, from your point of view, Martin, you must be rubbing your hands with absolute glee, because what looked like being a fairly tedious election campaign is positively delightful for you. It's pretty grim for us politicos, but pretty good for you, isn't it?
Well, it has finally leapt into life, but not in the way I'm sure that Sir Keir Starmer would like. But on a serious point, Stephen, you have to wonder if there's strength of leadership being shown. Earlier in the week, Diane Abbott was out, and then 6 union chiefs wrote to Sir Keir Starmer. Anna Sawal complained about it. Angela Rayner complained about it. And suddenly there's a U-turn. Who's in control? And if he's going to bow to Angela Rayner and Diane Abbott, how on earth can he stand up to Putin, Kim Jong-un or Donald Trump if he gets back in?
Nobody can accuse Keir Starmer of being weak on this. I think he's been particularly strong at this. But look, the fact is he can't micromanage every aspect of the Labour Party. He can't manage. We've got 650 MPs. He's not going to be on top of every selection of every one of those 650 MPs. Of course he's not. And we do have a mechanism within the Labour Party which actually allows this matter to be dealt with by the regional office or the National Executive Committee. And they're going to make a decision on Tuesday, which is when they would basically close the books on who's going to stand at the next election. I don't think there's any sign of weakness here from Keir Starmer. I think there's fairly humanity here, but there's also, above all, there's a steely purposefulness. Some of the people that he has actually drawn the line through are people who, frankly, shouldn't be Labour MPs. And it's not something, when you're a Labour MP, it's actually a pretty responsible position. And, you're representing your people and your country. And it's something you can't afford to have people who don't take the job seriously or, above all, Martin, have another agenda. There's no point in having people elected on the Labour ticket who then campaign against the Labour Party. And we've seen too much of that in the past, I'm sorry to tell you.
OK, let's look back on the Conservatives' week. Rishi Sunak, you can't doubt his energy. You can't doubt his vim. He's been full of beans out there, but it's not quite landing in the polls. 25 points ahead, still, the Labour Party. The interesting thing, Stephen, is that people like Rishi's policies. 3/4 have backed the pension boost. 47 like the idea of scrapping Mickey Mouse degrees, but they're not quite warming to Rishi Sunak himself. Do the Tories have a Rishi problem?
Yeah, well, the thing is, the dial's not shifted. He's come up with all this stuff. I mean, frankly, the national service idea was just risible. I think that pretty much blew up as soon as he launched it. But, some of the other stuff, of course, but he's not actually shifted the dial. And I think this is the interesting thing. At the end of each week of the election campaign, the people in all the various offices, they sit down, the Conservative Central Office, Labour Party HQ, and we do a grid of who's had a good week and who's had a bad week. And I think you can kind of grade all the political parties for the last week. And I think that probably the worst week for the last week, frankly, was Ed Davey, the Liberal Democrats, because, you can stand being frightened of being scared of in people in politics, but being feared, but not being laughed at. And this business about him wobbling around on a bodyboard on Lake Windermere and then tossing himself off for his own amusement and for our elucidation was just downright risible. And I hope he didn't swallow. I hope he spat that water out, because we all know what it's like up there. Yeah, and he just looked silly, sliding down a wet slide, ending up in the birth position between the legs of one of the candidates. It's just downright embarrassing. And, Rishi Sunak's not had a great one. I mean, he's certainly not endeared himself to people in South Wales for asking how they're going to get on in the football, believe you me. And the Labour Party, yeah, I'll be perfectly honest, it's been a pretty grim couple of days for us, and it's been a self-inflicted wound. The DUP have got problems over there. The Scottish Nationalist Party got problems. Plaid Cymru have got problems. The Labour Party in Wales have got problems. So, and dear old Reform have got problems because they've missed out on their golden opportunity to have Nigel coming through and actually leading what would have probably been a pretty successful campaign. So nobody's had a good week. In fact, the only people who can really look back on the last 7 days with a smile of glee and rubbing their hands with joy, frankly, are people like yourself, Margie, because it's been pretty entertaining. And thank you for keeping a straight face, and thank you particularly for actually keeping to talking about the actual issues, as Tony Benn used to say, talk about the issues that are important things. What could be more important than the future of this country, the defence of this country, the health service, public order, public safety, law and order? All those things are crucial. Let's not be distracted by the flim-flam and the silly nonsense of falling off paddleboards and all that rubbish. Let's not be distracted by selection problems within the Labour Party. Let's try to get onto the issues and see what the debates will actually show. The world's too damn dangerous at the moment to allow ourselves to be distracted by silliness and stupidity. We've got to be strong. We've got to be serious. We've got to be a proper, sober democracy. There's plenty of examples of people around the world who are making a mockery of democracy. Let's not try to go down that road ourselves, please.
Stephen Pound, wise words, sage-like advice to round off your talk there on this Friday afternoon. But of course, Stephen, we will have more pictures. We will have more pictures of Ed Davey falling off a paddleboard and much, much more. And don't get me started on David Cameron's shocking pint of beer that he pulled this week. Do you want to flake with that? Is the most appropriate response. Stephen Pound, go and have yourself a pint. Speak to you again another time. Always a delight. Thanks for joining us. Now, stand by for lots more reaction to Donald Trump's dramatic speech earlier in Trump Tower. I'm about to speak to one of Joe Biden's former chief of staff to see what their take is. In fact, here's live pictures here of Trump leaving Trump Tower now, waving to a crowd. A lot of people outside, both supportive and against him. We'll have full reaction after this. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
What about the elections? Because it seems that the King and everything is moving because of it, and we've got a lot of royal engagements and things that happen at this time.
Yes, well, it means that he has to take more time and be at home. He can't go to all the things he wants to do. He's been doing 5 a day, which is probably made Camilla a bit cross. But what they still hope is that they can get the Japanese emperor and empress over. That's in July. That they can go to France for the 80th anniversary of the fighting. And he will be able to do 1 or 2 things. And Ascot he's very keen to do. Now, those aren't things that are political in any way. I just want to talk about Harry and Charles's argument, where Harry said he didn't want to stay, he wanted to go to a hotel. And it's come out now that actually King Charles is believed that he was put into, offered St James's, and Princess Anne stays there, and Beatrice stays there.
And this was for when Harry came over
when
for his
10th yeah, exactly. And the policemen are wandering around with guns, and there's no chance of actually there being any problem there. So the fact that he said that it wasn't safe for him was not actually a very sensible thing to say, I don't think.
Well, he went to Nigeria, and that is, in the world ranking, it's ranked as quite a dangerous place.
Yes, one of the dangerous places in the world. But now Harry and Meghan have been invited to go to Ghana.
Oh, God. Well, it's interesting because my parents are from Ghana. I have Ghanaian heritage, and I'm thinking she'll probably then claim there's a percentage that she's Ghanaian as well. I'll be like, hang on a minute, you were Maltese, you're also Nigerian,
and
now you're going to say you're Ghanaian and German. Yeah. Come on. Thank you very much.
Squeeze it in.
Yeah, let's get them all in. Angela Levin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel. This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:25. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now let's get more on that incredible speech by Donald Trump. He said he'd appeal against his conviction for falsifying business records. And Donald Trump also said that Joe Biden is the dumbest president of all time. Well, joining me now is Susan Platt, who is Joe Biden's former chief of staff. Welcome to the show, Susan. A delight to have your company. As you'd expect, Donald Trump was hardly meek and mild. He said, if this can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. This is bigger than Trump or my presidency. November the 5th is the most important day in the history of America. What was your takeaway from that speech?
Well, Martin, thank you for having me. It was in usual Trump style. It was rambling. It was disjointed. It was full of lies and misrepresentations and attacks at everyone. And he never claimed to take any responsibility for anything he's done. I'll tell you, last night when the guilty counts on all 34 counts were announced, I'll have to admit I did open a bit of bubbly. But my other thought was, you know,
we can see there
were 12 people, 12 of Donald Trump's peers that found him guilty on all those counts. And I was a little concerned about what Trump would ask other folks to do across the country, like he did on January 6th and attacked the Capitol. But I was so thrilled this morning when nothing happened, no courts were attacked, nothing, there were no demonstrations in the street. And I think what that means is people still know what's right and wrong, what's legal and illegal. And contrary to what some will say to them, they still believe it.
Donald Trump, of course, has got on a front foot and said not only is the system rigged politically, but now judicially. He cast a shadow over the entire state of the American judiciary, and he's on a gagging order, lest we forget, Susan Platt. And yet he came out saying the judge was compromised, saying he looks like an angel, but actually he's a devil. Do you think now Donald Trump will take this forward, not only to attack the entire political system, we've seen him attack the media system before, but now he's turning his guns on the entire legal establishment, the fabric of the American establishment?
Of course he will. What's different? He has never claimed responsibility for anything that he's done. Of course, he said he's never done anything wrong. I beg to differ with that. But, you know, we stood tall yesterday. The citizens of New York stood tall yesterday. We're still here today. And I think, you know, the rule of law has to stand at some point. This country was founded on that equal justice for all. And I think it's about darn time that we do find some justice here. And, you know, he talks about no other president has been brought up on all these charges. Well, there's a reason for that. No other president has lied, skirted the truth, and gotten away with so much for so long. It's about time the chickens come home to roost.
And do you think his attacks on Joe Biden himself, I mean, again, we would expect that. He called him the dumbest, most incompetent president we've ever had, the Manchurian candidate, implying he's in the pocket of Russia and of China. Susan, do you think that the Biden camp would be wise to go back to Trump and say, well, you're a felon, you're convicted? Will they go down that route, or would that be an attack line, or do you think they'll play more polite, more Queensberry rules? What would your advice be to Joe Biden?
I think they'll start with talking about the issues, talking about the rule of law and our democracy, but ultimately you can't avoid the elephant in the room. This would be the first president, if he were to be elected, that was convicted of any crime, let alone 34 felony counts, and leaving aside all the other trials that will happen. Unfortunately, I think this is going to be the only one that will come to conclusion before the election. But I think the Republican Party as well will sit back and think, do we really want to nominate someone who's convicted of 34 felonies? Never. It's an historic time, but it's a challenging time for us. And I think we have to rise to that challenge.
And Susan, can I quickly ask you, a lot of opinion polls we're seeing in America are saying, particularly young people, they are concerned about Joe Biden's mental capacity, his wherewithal. He's an old guy. Is that something that you're, in your heart of hearts, is it something that bothers the Biden campaign team moving into the presidential election in November?
Well, it's not something you can change. And I've known Joe Biden for, 30-some years. And when I recently talked to him, he's the same guy I talked to years ago. I mean, I can't imagine a man. I talked to him about something that happened a long time ago, and he goes, I remember that. And point by point, Joe Biden is still 100 completely there, knows what he's doing, and there's a competence to Joe Biden. This afternoon, he's going to be doing a press conference on the Middle East. Donald Trump is on a diatribe trying to defend himself for maligning women. People forget about that. This is an adulterer. This is one who was accused of rape. This is one who was accused of election fraud. What are we going to take?
OK, well, it's going to be the greatest show on earth, as it always is, that election on November the 5th. Certainly in Britain, it's fireworks night. Certainly there are going to be fireworks that night in America. Susan Platt, Joe Biden's former chief of staff, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have your company on the show. Thank you for joining us. Now, still lots more to come between now and 6 o'clock, and I'll tell you why one of Madonna's fans is suing the Queen of Pop. Is the true blue star now too blue? But first, here's your headlines, and it's Polly Middlehurst.
You with GB News, the headlines this hour. Let's take you to the United States first, where Donald Trump has called his conviction part of a grand conspiracy and accused the judge in his case in the courthouse in Manhattan of being conflicted following his unprecedented trial and the outcome last night. He's been speaking at a news conference in the last hour at Trump Tower in New York, hours after being convicted of all 34 counts of falsifying business records relating to hush money payments to the porn star Stormy Daniels. During a wide-ranging 33-minute speech, Trump vowed to appeal what he described as a scam verdict. The now convicted former president also falsely said the United States is a fascist state, and he claimed he's fighting for the Constitution. He's due to be sentenced on the 11th of July unless he files an appeal. Sir Keir Starmer says Diane Abbott is free to stand as a Labour candidate at the election, ending days of uncertainty for the Labour Party. Miss Abbott had the Labour whip restored this week after a long suspension, but claimed she'd been banned from standing as a candidate and accused the Labour leader of culling the party's left wing. Staying with Labour, Sir Keir Starmer says his party is going to fix Britain's economy as he outlined a series of plans to cut household bills. Speaking at an event in Scotland, the Labour leader said the new publicly owned GBNews entity would cut costs and speed up the transition to clean power. The Prime Minister dismissed it as a vanity project. And here in London, police are appealing for any information from the Turkish and Kurdish communities as a 9-year-old girl remains in a critical condition in hospital after a drive-by shooting that happened in East London. She was having dinner with her family in a restaurant in the borough of Hackney when shots were fired from a motorbike outside the restaurant. 3 men sitting outside the restaurant were also hurt. One of those is facing life-changing injuries. Detectives are saying that motorbike used in the attack had been stolen from a property in Wembley in 2021, and they're urging anyone with any information about the bike or anything else to come forward to the police or contact Crime Stoppers. And in Germany, multiple people have been injured after a man apparently stabbed members of the public during an online live stream event. The attacker was reportedly outside a campaign tent for the German anti-Islamist group called Citizens Movement Pax Europa before he was shot by police. Those are the headlines. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen, or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Let's bring you up to date then with today's numbers. The market's looking like this. The pound buying you $1.2724 and €1.1734. The price of gold, £1,000 and £834 and 81 pence an ounce. And the FTSE 100 has closed for the day today at 8,275 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Polly, and thanks to everyone who's been getting in touch today on Donald Trump, on Diane Abbott, on Ed Davies' aquatic frolics. And if you want to get in touch with us, there's a new way to do it. And here's Bev Turner with all of the details.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/your say.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, my name is Johnny Ratner with your latest. In Northumberland, south of Berwick-upon-Tweed, the A1 remains shut through Haggerston at the scene of a serious accident. And in County Durham, the A1M is closed each way from junction 62 at the Carville turnoff to the Chesterland Street exit, junction 63 at the scene of a serious accident, causing lengthy queues on the approach and on the surrounding routes, not least through Durham, Leamside and Bournemore. And meanwhile, on the M5 heading north through the West Midlands from junction 3 to 2 towards Dudley, an accident's blocking off the left lane. Long queues on the Surrey stretch of the M25 anti-clockwise into the roadworks at Godstone Junction 6. In Devon, there are queues heading north up the M5, 29 to 28, heading north of Exeter, where a vehicle's having its tyre changed, blocking off the left lane, and really slow on the M4 westbound at Junction 24 towards Newport following an earlier collision. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Have government done enough, do you think, to actually help them out?
I think there will be occasions where people have tried to run a venture, whether it be a pub, a restaurant or anything sort of like that, in the hospitality sector, and it hasn't become commercially viable because of costs, because of bad accounting or because of bad business people. That is just a fact of life. That happens in every sector. So there will be pubs that are closing because they've been poorly run. But I do think there will be occasions where people are forced out of the market. So if local councils aren't being able to pass on business rates, for example, maybe central government can do more. It always tries to do more to cut beer duty and things like that to keep pubs going. So I don't think it's necessarily just as plain as what James is saying, is that, you know, bad pubs will just inevitably be falling by the wayside.
The idea that you two gentlemen, you raging capitalists, support the government stepping in to protect pubs seems to me to be particularly peculiar. If a pub isn't commercially viable, it has to be allowed to fail.
Well, Sadiq Khan, you know, he has a nighttime czar that he pays well over 100 grand.
Yes.
And businesses are going under like you wouldn't believe in London.
She's a real nightmare.
What's your point?
Well, the point is that Labour aren't exactly helping out these businesses, are they? So
I'm saying that pubs should not be protected by the state. I'm all for a pub.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we subsidise pubs.
That has been suggested. That's what James May is railing against. Although I have to say, it's all very well for James May and presumably his very posh gastropub. But if a pub is not fit for purpose, and May makes this point, you know, you've got to have decent, clean loos and a clean pub. And also, realistically, in this day and age, you know, times change. You've got to put on some decent grub as well if you want it to survive. We can't have the government stepping in to save our pubs. And anyway, my understanding over the last 10, 20 years, as a percentage, we haven't lost that many pubs, so they're not going under anytime soon.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:39. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, a planned memorial to honour the Royal Navy's role in ending the slave trade is facing a backlash due to claims that it lacked sensitivity. The statue, intended to commemorate the West Africa Squadron, which rescued 150,000 slaves in the 19th century, was to be installed near Portsmouth Historic Dockyard. But Landsec, the owners of the quay, rode back on the proposals, saying the statue would be out of keeping with the welcoming and inclusive environment it sought to foster. Well, joining us to try and make sense of this is the political commentator Kez Hussain. Welcome to the show. Hope you're having a great Friday. What fresh madness is this? This is a statue designed to commemorate the ending of slavery. How on earth can that be something that's, what, racist?
It's just insufferable. I mean, it's incontestable, irrefutable, indisputable that this statue will show Britain in a positive outlook, and it'll show Britain in a good light. Hence the brisk and hostile objections to having this statue.
And in terms of the facts, it's worth going over them. Again, the Royal Navy's West Africa Squadron was specifically and deliberately set up to end the slave trade in Africa. In doing so, 1,600 slave ships were liberated, 150,000 African slaves, more than 2,000 sailors lost their lives, British sailors. It was the most dangerous ticket in the entire Royal Navy. Surely, Kez, that is worthy of commemoration.
You're completely correct, but we don't just do, this is just not an isolated incident. We don't celebrate Sir John Newton, who, contributed to the slave trade being abolished in 1807, just before he died. Just after he died, it got abolished. We don't celebrate Florence Nightingale because she's a white privileged female. We don't celebrate people because in Britain, we don't celebrate anybody who does anything good, because Britain is this evil country and we've only committed negative acts.
Now, it turns out that the owners, Landsec, it is a private piece of land. They own it. They can make this decision. It's up to them. But, Kez, they took this decision, apparently, when they asked their employees who objected. Why?
They objected because they don't want to upset people, because the Royal Navy, people have been indoctrinated to believe that it contributed to slavery, even though it abolished, was contributed to abolishing slavery. And it's caused a lot of media traction. And even Penny Mordaunt's got involved, and she says these people deserve to be recognised. Toby Young of the Free Speech Union has called it outrageous. It's just a way of getting attention people have done, and it's taken away attention from the Royal Navy, who are heroes, quite frankly, to people of colour like myself, because they liberated people.
No, it's wise words there, Kez, saying, and you're right. Penny Mordaunt, who's a constituency MP for this area, has in fact been trying to fundraise to get a statue built, to have it paid for. It seems that will hit the buffers because Landsec, the landowners, they just won't allow it. Thanks for joining us, Kez Hussain, political commentator. Always a delight to have you on the show. Now, if you want to see Rishi Sunak looking like Mickey Mouse or a baby ruining a photo opportunity for Sir Keir Starmer, then you're in luck. I'm about to show you the best and the worst images from the first full week of the general election campaign. Brace yourselves. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello again, here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. As we head into the weekend, and whilst it won't be completely dry, there will be a good deal of fine and settled weather around, and also some warm sunshine too, because of high pressure that is going to continue to extend its way in from the west. Like I said though, not completely dry, and that's the theme that we've had through today. Some outbreaks of rain in southeast, most of these though clearing away as we go through the evening and overnight. A few outbreaks of rain across the north of Scotland, otherwise it is going to be a mostly dry night, a bit cloudy towards eastern parts, clearer skies further west, and where we see some clear skies, I'm expecting temperatures to just about dip into single figures, and there could be the odd pocket of mist and fog first thing tomorrow. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, it is going to be a mostly fine day. Still some lingering cloud across eastern parts of Scotland first thing, and there could be a few outbreaks of rain here. Further west, though, a largely dry, bright and sunny story as we go through the morning and into the afternoon as well. Perhaps a bit of cloud cloud at times across Northern Ireland may bring the odd spot of rain, but on the whole, a mostly fine picture here, and a similar mostly fine story for Wales and Western England. However, across Eastern England, we may still have some cloud lingering from today, and that could bring a little bit of drizzly rain, but that is likely to clear away as we go through the morning, and things should brighten up quite nicely. We may see a bit of cloud building in other areas where it starts sunny, and as a result, we could also see a couple of showers developing, but most places are going to stay dry and at times quite bright. A bit of a breeze, but it won't be as strong as today, and with that feeling a bit warmer too, temperatures more widely in the high teens or low 20s. As we go through later on tomorrow, we are going to stick with the mostly dry picture, just 1 or 2 showers, but most places are going to avoid these. Some clear skies overnight into Sunday could again allow for some mist and fog patches, but for most, Sunday's going to be a fine day before some rain starts to push in to the far northwest later. Bye-bye.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:46. I'm Martin Daubney. It's GB News. We're on the final furlong now. Is Madonna too blue? Well, one of her fans has filed a lawsuit against the Material Girl, accusing her of exposing concert goers to pornography without warning. The lawsuit also alleges that concert goers were forced to watch topless women simulate sexual acts. Well, joining me now is the showbiz reporter, Steph Tetchy. Steph, always a delight to have you on the show. How are you doing? So, first of all, who would be surprised that going to a Madonna show isn't going to be full of simulated sex? Isn't that what she does?
Martin, this concert goer has clearly been living under a rock. I think more people would have sued Madonna if she didn't include any scenes of a sexual nature in her show. I think that's when the punters will be quite disappointed that they didn't get their money's worth. This celebration tour has been receiving rave reviews across the whole globe. And then we've got this punter here who's quite annoyed because he says that there were women on stage who were topless and it was almost like they were doing gyrating moves, which is to be expected in a Madonna show. She's always been about sex positivity, exploring the body on stage. So for these concert goers to be clearly getting their knickers in a twist, it makes no sense and it's a waste of money. But with this lawsuit, there is other things that's, you know, obviously the media's going for the top line about the sexual stuff, but they are complaining as well that, you know, during the concert, which took place back in March in LA, they were saying it was too hot, and when they were complaining to Madonna, Madonna just told them to take their clothes off, which is obviously quite funny, but for them, they said it actually provided them with quite a bit of emotional distress, and it actually made them feel physically ill. The problem with these kind of lawsuits, Martin, is no sweat off Madonna's nose. You know, she's done a great tour, and these people are actually wasting their money. You know, you cannot be going to see someone like a legend like Madonna and not expect it to be X-rated. We all have that choice of what we're going to see, and unfortunately for these people, they just got it wrong.
Steph, it sounds absolutely reprehensible. It sounds utterly shocking. Can you get me any tickets? Just joking. I'll tell you what, though, a lot of people are saying online, that the acts now, and also like Sam Smith, there is an increasing amount of overly sexualised material, and that could be a problem if you're taking the nippers.
Well, Martin, the problem is, well, not even the problem. We all know that sex sells when it comes to shows and when it comes to the entertainment industry. And like with most things, when it comes to film, concerts, it's all down to individual choice. If it's too much for you or you think it's not something that's going to be appropriate for you, you can always miss out. No one's telling you to spend your money. This person spent over £500 per ticket to go see Madonna. So you must have that well-educated choice. If it's going to be too much for you, just give it a miss. But I think with the entertainment industry, there is that argument, Martin, whether it is going too far now with its X-ratedness. You know, it's almost like all these acts are trying to outdo each other. And maybe this is a new trend that will start where fans do want to clap back and say, enough is enough.
Yeah, you'd surely think, though, Steph, that if you have kids and you know what you're going to get, it's like going to a steakhouse as a vegan and complaining there's too much meat. Steph Tetchy, always a superb menu when you come on the show. Thank you very much for joining us. Always a delight. Have a fantastic weekend for yourself. Now, as it's Friday and we're all getting ready for the weekend, I thought I'd look back at some of the funniest moments of the last few days on the general election campaign. Now, don't worry, this isn't just going to be the Ed Davey show, but of course we have to start with the Liberal Democrat leader. There he is. He tried his hand at paddleboarding on Tuesday on Lake Windermere, and as you can see, man overboard, looking for floating voters. I thought he was against stuff that was plopping into the water. Moving on, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has promised to clamp down on what many people call Mickey Mouse degrees. Well, as we can see here, a photographer caught the Prime Minister looking very much like the cartoon Mickey Mouse character himself. I love those pictures, always at an uncompromising angle. And of course, we can't leave Sir Keir Starmer out of this campaign craziness because, look, though Baby tried to leave the Labour leader out of this picture, look, he's going to talk to the hand because the face ain't listening. You can't control babies on campaign trails. Now, of course, let's check in on Ed Davey again. This time, there he is. He got on his bike. This was yesterday in Cornwall, I believe. Luckily, he didn't lose his balance here. Well done. He can ride a bike. And, of course, David Cameron, well, he's fought in many, many campaigns, but he wouldn't be stupid enough to make a show of himself, would he? Well, look at the state of that pint. Would anyone like a flake with that pint? To his credit, he drank the evidence as quickly as physically possible. That was in a boozer in Macclesfield. I know Macclesfield. If you served that up there, you'd soon be wearing it. It probably tasted good, but by Jove, didn't look very good at all, did it? Now, Sir Keir Starmer clearly thinks that if at first you don't succeed, try again. No chance of the baby ruining that photo opportunity. Sir Keir Starmer went back for more. No doubt that will please the mums and the housewives. Cute. You can't beat a baby on a campaign trail. But it's time to see what else Sir Ed Davey has been up to. Yes, he's been on the slide. What a donut. There he is, going down the slide. Let's hope for his sake that that's not a metaphor for the Liberal Democrats' election chances. But, of course, we've saved the best bit to last. Yes, unforgettably, it's Rishi Sunak showing why he never made it as a footballer. 2 left feet. Look at that. I mean, this will haunt him. I sincerely believe that will haunt him. It's the worst display I've seen since Diana Ross at the World Cup missed that penalty. And Steve, my senior producer, always says she did that because they shouted, "Miss Diana Ross." And she booted the ball wide. I think that will haunt him. Earlier in the election campaign, Chris Hope, our political editor, challenged Sir Keir Starmer on my behalf. Can you do 100 keepy-uppies? Apparently, he's quite tasty at football. Starmer turned it down. Smart fella. Getting it wrong haunts you forever. It's a forever moment. Now, I've had so many emails during the show, so many you'll say's coming in, and most of them have been about Donald Trump. Those 34 guilty counts last night and his explosive press conference around about an hour ago we carried on GB News. He's roaring back, calling America a fascist state, saying November the 5th is the most important date in American history, the date to save America. Connor says this: the left don't care about a fair or a just trial. They just want the guilty verdicts. They just want Trump dead and buried. Chris says this: Trump derangement system is now in full force. I absolutely love it. Roll on the 5th of November. Go Trump, US President 2024. Lee says, says this: if Donald Trump loses again in November, will it be rigged again this time? Or will he just have to accept that he's a loser? Louise has this: The worst thing will be his revenge, Trump's revenge, if he gets into the White House. Then we will see America descend into absolute chaos. Phil adds this: we need to take notice in the UK of what's happening in the US as within our country. It's already started with the courts and the policing. Now, I believe it'll get 100 times worse if the Labour Party become the next government. We must protect our laws, our culture, our history and our future of the legal vote. Now, moving on. We're moving on to the show now. It's Dubes and Car for this. I'm back on Monday. National weather. Alex Burkill.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. As we head into the weekend, and whilst it won't be completely dry, there will be a good deal of fine and settled weather around, and also some warm sunshine too, because of high pressure that is going to continue to extend its way in from the west. Like I said though, not completely dry, and that's the theme that we've had through today. Some outbreaks of rain in southeast, most of these though clearing away as we go through the evening and overnight. A few outbreaks of rain across the north of Scotland, otherwise it is going to be a mostly dry night, a bit cloudy towards eastern parts, clearer skies further west, and where we see some clear skies, I'm expecting temperatures to just about dip into single figures, and there could be the odd pocket of mist and fog first thing tomorrow. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, it is going to be a mostly fine day. Still some lingering cloud across eastern parts of Scotland first thing, and there could be a few outbreaks of rain here. Further west though, a largely dry, bright and sunny story as we go through the morning and into the afternoon as well. Perhaps a bit of cloud at times across Northern Ireland may bring the odd spot of rain, but on the whole a mostly fine picture here, and a similar mostly fine story for Wales and Western England. However, across eastern England we may still have some cloud lingering from today, and that could bring a little bit of drizzly rain, but that is likely to clear away as we go through the morning, and things should brighten up quite nicely. We may see a bit of cloud building in other areas where it starts sunny, and as a result we could also see a couple of showers developing, but most places are going to stay dry and at times quite bright. A bit of a breeze, but it won't be as strong as today, and with that feeling a bit warmer too, temperatures more widely in the high teens or low 20s. As we go through later on tomorrow, we are going to stick with the mostly dry picture, just one or two showers, but most places are going to avoid these. Some clear skies overnight into Sunday could again allow for some mist and fog patches, but for most, Sunday's going to be a fine day before some rain starts to push in to the far northwest later. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, my name is Johnny Ratner. Major problems for the M90 in Perth. The motorway is currently being held northbound from junction 10 to 12 just off the Broxton roundabout near Perth at the scene of an accident, where the outside lane is also closed on the opposite side of the carriageway. In Northumberland, just south of Berwick-upon-Tweed, a serious accident has closed the A1 at Haggerston. Investigation work continues. And further south at County Durham, the A1M remains shut between Carville and Chester Street at the scene of a collision. The Surrey stretch of the M25 is blocked clockwise near to Staines, where a lorry is broken down, causing queues back to the M3, and really slow for about an hour further round anti-clockwise into the works at Godstone Junction 6. In Kent, the A2 is closed each way just off the A227 south of Gravesend after a van and a lorry collided, and Southern reporting delays of a quarter of an hour. London Bridge to East Croydon following problems with the signals at Brockley. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you